We live? How's it?
Hi friends, hi everyone. This is another episode of Xtra Bytes, and just give you a brief background. I think it was around mid-April, somewhere around I think 21st April, if I'm not wrong, was when we streamed our first episode of Xtra Bytes, and that time it was with the commercial advertising and street photographer Ielo Porfido from Italy. And now, fast forward, we are almost on the 70th day of our Extra Bytes. And today we are streaming live with episode number 44. And it's been a phenomenal journey for all of us and made possible by wonderful friends and speakers and panelists. And two of them are already here today. And today, I've been given this responsibility to introduce Soumya. So today we have a special guest speaker. So she's an independent photojournalist based in New Delhi, contributing for the New York Times and National Geographic, among others. A Getty Image Instagram grantee 2017 for her work Child Brides of Shravati. Her work focuses on gender and environmental issues. Nominated for World Press Photo 6x6 Global Talent Program from Asia region in 2019, Soumya has built a diverse body of work spanning journalism and documentary genre of photography over the past 6 years. I think I think her work speaks for itself. And before I share another couple of lines about her, so let me welcome her. Welcome, Soumya. Thank you for
so
accepting
much.
the invite to be on this channel and on this platform, sharing your work. And it's quite a pleasure to be hosting you here.
Thank you so
And
much, Jesse, for having me.
yeah, and if I had to just give a brief background, how did I get into? So I think people have diverse opinion about what COVID-19 lockdown has done to them. I don't know whether it is right or wrong, but it has done phenomenally well for people like me because I could get to know wonderful photographers, and I think I got to know Soumya through another talk show that she was on at F-Stop, and I was totally floored. It was kind of a hair-raising that those couple of hours for me, and that is when I had decided that when I host similar sessions, we'll certainly have Soumya on our speaker panel. So I think it goes back to that day. And I would not say much. So thank you, Dinesh sir and Amit sir for accepting to be on the panel. And we have one more person we are waiting for, Raj Lalwani ji, and he should be here very soon. But today's session is going to be moderated by none other than Amit Mehra sir. So Amit sir, please go ahead. Over to you.
Thank you, Jesse, for having all of us here. I believe, no, rather, it's the sessions are going wonderful. It's as I said in my session also, and if I repeat, you guys are doing a phenomenal job for as organizing these sessions because otherwise there are very fair chances that creative people like us who have practically nothing to do, we are practically out of job and out of assignments and not doing any activity or not actively involve anything. But your talks allows us to keep the sanity intact, our sanity intact. So that's.
Can I add one point to this
please
point?
Do that. Please do that. Please go ahead.
Also, I think what this has done, all these talks, whether it's on Jesse's platform or F-Stop or this Srishti, which these are platforms which I know of, is the fact that initially it might have been photographers who are from the same genre or people are known to each other, but over time, as Jesse very rightly said, that and I think it was very gracious of him to admit the fact that he came to know of Soumya through another channel, through another platform. And the fact that the kind of work she's been doing, monumental though it is, and important though it is been out of his particular understanding of photography or his interest in photography. For instance, for me, I have seen a lot of landscape photography work on Jesse's platform now, which I never used to even know about. So is this cross fertilization in a way, which that to my mind, besides what Amit is saying, has been the huge, huge plus for Indian photography and Indian photographers in general to be able to get aware of a lot more in photography rather than what you do yourself, and therefore limited to what people like you do also. So I'm sorry, Amit. I just wanted to make a point before I forget.
Very valid, very valid point. Very valid point.
Welcome, Raj sir.
Hi, Raj.
Hello, Raj. How are you?
Raj,
We can't hear you, Raj.
I'm so sorry. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
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 Hi, Raj. You're on time. So
By my standards, yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Anyway, Dinesh, you made a very valid point. And now coming back to the moderating the session, I think we have a wonderful moderator here, Raj Lalwani. But anyway, as far as Soumya is concerned, what should I say about her? You have said a lot. In fact, everything. I would only share my personal experience with her. It was 2012 when she first came to me, and she met me at the opening of my Kashmir show in Delhi at Photo Inc. And there were many other students. She was one of them, and then after that, she came to one of her friends who was already my student. She came, and then I was too busy. I was too busy in two things. My Kashmir book was coming out, my show was going on, and then I was looking after my daughter. So she called me. I said, well, I practically don't have time, but if you want to speak to me, I'm going from Saket to Connaught Place. She said, sir, I live in Green Park. I said, okay, I'll pick you up from Green Park and we can talk in the car, and then that's it. So I just, she joined me from Green Park and we had a conversation. The only thing I remember from that conversation, there was a spark in her eyes. She has very small, gold eyes. And there was a lot of spark in her eyes. As far as photography is concerned, she was very charged. But at the same time, she was very disoriented. It was a very contradictory situation that point of time because she was very charged, and at the same time, she was packing her bags and she was going back to Lucknow because she could not find a proper, I would say, proper area to work or proper breakthrough in her career or in photography. So she was very disillusioned, she was charged. So it was a mix of everything, high energy. So from there, our journey started. She came to me as my student, and here she is. Now I learn from her many things. So she is phenomenal. She's wonderful. The best thing is she's very transparent by heart. So here to you, Soumya. I'll keep butting in. Me, Raj, both, along with Dinesh, when Dinesh will be out. Otherwise, Dinesh is there. So I think we should carry on with your wonderful journey.
Thank you so much. So this panel has begun with a surprise. I did not know that I was being moderated by Amit sir. So that's the first surprise. I hope the rest of the surprises are all just as nice as this one.
Yeah. We are coming. Sovan Parekh is
coming. Thank you so much, Jesse, for inviting me for this platform. It's an incredible job of hosting so many sessions over the past two and a half months. And I'm sure there's so much that people are learning from this. Thank you, Dinesh sir, Raj, Amit sir, for being here and for agreeing to be a part of this conversation. As is customary, I think I'll begin with talking about where my interest and my itches in photography and the visual journey came from. Uh, so broadly, the things that I think would always guide me when I was, before before I took the decision of being into photography, was the fact that I was coming from a very protective family where, I'd never had a night out with any of my friends in the city. My mother or my dad would ensure that I'm being dropped by someone. And on the other hand, I was this person who really fiercely loved my independence. So, like for a lot of people, it would be a luxury that parents are dropping it, and that would go on till like class 12th. I would demand that I would want to go to school on a rickshaw, or I would just want to, be by myself and do things by myself. So I think that itch to really explore things and to know more about the world was always there. And dog is that? Hello. I think that's the Nishta's. Uh, but I think I saw photography as a way to explore and satiate that side of me. When I was in college, when I was doing my graduation, I was doing a BBA. I had friends in journalism who would go out on photo shoots, and sometimes I'd just go and hang out with their class because they'd have outdoor classes of photography. And their teacher, Trilochan sir, was really nice to let me hang around with the rest of the class as well. And, like everyone would share DSLRs, and we'd learn what the cameras were about. I had a compact Sony camera at that point of time that allowed me a few manual features as well. So I was just exploring things, and I would go around, go out with my friends and explore the outskirts of Lucknow. And I always remembered them as being the most amazing experiences for me. Like I can categorically remember the first night that I spent out of my home, uh, with friends when I was going for a basketball tournament, and we got down on the highway at around midnight to take to get some meal. And I think that freedom and that sense of being outdoors was intoxicating. So, which is why when BBA wasn't really, I mean, I was doing BBA and I was involved with some student organizations, and I was getting a taste of management. And management is something that I always wanted to do. But when I got a real taste of it, I realized that this was not something that was really making me happy, and it wasn't something that I had imagined it to really be. Uh, so, which is where I started looking for other avenues. I was preparing for MBA, and there was this one class where a teacher prioritized money over
Management.
work-life balance. And that was the class when I realized that probably MBA is not uh, what I would like to do for the rest of my life. Management is not my preferred choice. And thus, because photography was the only other thing I knew, and because as women we don't really have the pressures of having careers, and my parents were pretty much okay. My father always thought that I would probably be some sort of artist. I used to paint when I was a kid, so he thought I would go into one of these fields, and they were okay with me exploring these avenues. So I told them that that photography it will be. They conceded. I gave various exams, and then I eventually got accepted in Jamia, and I cleared the interview, and thus my journey in photography started. But honestly, when I was going to Delhi, and even when I was studying at Jamia, I didn't really know what was going to happen of it. Is this something that I'll make a career out of? Or is this something that is just temporary? Because I'm a very restless person, so I keep hopping from one thing to the other, and I really get exhausted with things easily. And I thought photography could also be one of that. The state of confusion that Amit sir talked about, I think it was there because this time the stakes were too high. It wasn't like I was just sitting at home and I could say I want to do one thing one day and do another thing another day. I was in another city, and my parents were paying the fees, and after my course would get over, I was very conscious that I knew that, I think the kind of parents that they are, they would be there to support me, but that wasn't an option that I wanted to give myself, because I I just thought that, this is your time to be to be proving yourself for everything you could really do. And which is why Dinesh sir, who's here in the panel, and Prashant Panjir, who was also a guest faculty at Jamia, uh, I was familiarized with them. And when I passed out of my college, Prashant Panjir offered me an internship with an NGO where he was curating an exhibition. And thus, uh, I set on to the professional world of photography. I wasn't really shooting. I was basically assisting him as a curator on that, but I kind of got exposed to, the formats of an exhibition, what's the kind of work that goes behind it. And I was really uh, I was really enjoying all of it, but somewhere I was also conscious that my photography wasn't really advancing in a particular direction. The way we were trained was we would do a lot of street photography, and once you set out on the field, you realize that uh, the industry is very different. Just doing street photography doesn't earn you money, and I wasn't really honed enough to know what were the various options in terms of the genres of photography that I could really take, and also, what way to head, because it's not like, let's say, an industry where you can just go with your CV and expect to get a job or expect people to reciprocate. So I think I was in that space. I was staying with a friend. She had a house there, and I was staying with her, so I didn't for some time I didn't really have to worry about my rent. That was being taken care of. But I still had the other expenses, and with what I was getting in an internship, I was able to support myself. Uh, but that itch was, but that process of questioning myself is there, just to tell myself that I was still shooting. I would kind of step out. I would walk around places, just advancing my street photography. I explored Yamuna, and once or twice I kind of went to some lake in Delhi, or I would go to some bank in of the Yamuna, and I would really enjoy myself there. And then when I was in this real fix on what I should do with my photography, I happened to attend an exhibition which is called Kashmir, which was Amit Sir's exhibition. And uh, in one of the talks that, in rather the talk that he did as a part of the exhibition, he was talking about how he had built this entire body of work over a couple of years, which he then trashed because he realized that this wasn't the narrative that he was there to shoot. It was a very it was a very photojournalistic point of view, and it was what he'd already seen that he was advancing with. And once he trashed that particular body of work, he got the perspective to see uh, his subject and the place in a very different way. And I think that was the place where I which kind of stuck to me, because I realized that there, as an artist, that's the test that we have. I think failures are just as much a part of what we do as our successes. Then, like Amit sir said, he found the time to see me, and he found the time to advise me on how I should advance with things. That was the time when I was questioning if I should stay back in Delhi, because I did not know how the next set of expenses could be paid over the next few months. And I wasn't really sure if I was really advancing in terms of my career. And he told me that I should. Uh, he looked at my photographs, and his exact words were, "You should shoot more." And I looked at him blankly, because I was like, "What does that mean?" And then he went on to explain me that, you have an eye and you should shoot more. So which was kind of encouraging to know that at least he saw some potential there. And then we mutually decided, he told me, give yourself 6 months. and give this time to your photography. If in these 6 months, work with me, we're going to be working on, you're going to be working on documentary projects, and I'll ensure that, I'll give you time and I'll mentor you on those projects. If after that you still feel that photography is not what's meant for you, then feel free to, pack your bags, go back to Lucknow. But in the larger scheme of things, if those 6 months do work out for you, it could really change the way, you see photography. And in the larger span of your life, those 6 months would probably be very inconsequential. And I this idea did appeal to me, and I did agree to give myself this time, and which is how I started working on my first project, which was along the Yamuna and which was along the water bodies, which I'll share with everyone here. Is the screen visible?
Yeah.
All right, great. Uh, so I started working along the Yamuna and along the other water bodies in Delhi. I think in a lot of ways it resonated with me because it basically resonated with the loner in me. I I have always been the kind of person who really cherishes the time that I get with myself, and walking along water bodies was giving me that time and space. It was as much a conversation with the water bodies as it was with myself. And so what I did was I bought a physical map of Delhi and I traced the path that Yamuna takes. And then I would start zeroing down on the various places that I would want to explore along the Yamuna. It was a fairly doable process in a city like Delhi because it's very well connected with buses and metros and e-rickshaws and all sorts of local transportation. So I traveled to really far off areas and to very isolated lakes to really explore the relationship that water has with people, and also in a way what's the relationship that I was having with this form of nature. I was really fascinated to see how water bodies were so intrinsic to religion. Now you have to discount the fact here that I was coming from very protective environment. So for me, this was my chance to explore the world and to really see things, and I would be wide-eyed about everything that I'd see. When I went to Kumbh for the first time, I was in awe of the lakhs and lakhs of people and the belief that they really had in the water body and its spirituality, you know. And for once, I questioned my own self and my own belief, or rather disbelief, because I could, in a smaller group of people, I could really discount for the fact that, I chose not to be religious. I had a spiritual side of me. But when lakhs of people are gathering for this one purpose, I questioned my own education and if that was being a hindrance to my own uh, dedication and involvement with the water bodies. Because nature is a great teacher. It teaches you. So even to a disbeliever like me, I did return every time, believing a lot more in the capacity of what it could do. But despite the fact that religion was so intrinsically uh, involved with the water body, and also how civilization was all evolving on the banks of water bodies, it really saddened my heart to see how callously we dealt with this source of life. Water obviously had the various purposes that it served. It had, uh, you know, and you see it in terms of how it's the very source of life, and not just in terms of the water that we drink, but also in terms of how we engage with it in every level of activity. You have washermen around the water bodies. In very cluttered slums, people would hang out along the banks of the water bodies to just get that fresh air and to get that openness of space. But despite that fact, there's that intrinsic callousness which has led to the scarcity of water, and which has led to to other problems, related problems like commodification of water. and which therein led to problems like the problems of garbage. So I think this was a journey uh, which was my first long-term engagement with one theme, and it allowed me the space to really explore and get deeper into this one thing, and the way stories kind of branched out and evolved out of that space. So in those ways, it was a very enriching experience for me, and this project also solidified my belief in photography. Uh, after 6 months passed when I was working on this project, and one day Amit asked me if I still wanted to do photography, and I was like, of course, why are you asking that? And he said, because it's been 6 months since we had the conversation, which I had completely forgotten about, because I was now engaging with photography in such a different way, and I was enjoying myself, and I really got the direction that I needed. I I got the sense that I was heading in some way, that I knew what I was doing with photography. So I think in those ways, this project has always been very close to my heart, because this is where it all began. If there are any questions, then I'm happy to take them right now.
I was just wondering, at your last picture, is there any norm of social distancing now? Because
Well,
the kind of life we live in, those water issues in Delhi, and not in Delhi, all over India, and how the scarcity of water is there. And at the same time, we have this new norm of social distancing. I don't know where the life is going to be.
Amit, can you hold your mic a bit closer, please? Your
Sorry.
voice is fading.
Am I audible now?
yeah.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. So it's just a comment on the last picture. I just noticed, about the social distancing norm and the scarcity of water. There are two absolutely contradictory situations in India, and there are many contradictory situations. But anyway,
I think like a lot of people have acknowledged now, and they realize this, that social distancing is also a privilege. For most of India, it's not a reality that they can
yeah,
even
very
imagine.
true. Very true. Anyway, I'll reserve the question for later. You carry on.
I think Raj has a question.
Soumya, since this is one of your early works, I wanted to try and get an idea that you were starting into photography. Apart from Amit, who was like a mentor to you, who were the other visual inspirations? Because most people, when they are starting out, sometimes they decide that, okay, this is a kind of photography I want to pursue. I want to pursue fashion, or I want to do landscapes, or in your case, more of storytelling or journalistic work. But there are always certain heroes we have, which eventually shape the way we see our initial photos. Who were those for you?
Uh, when I started photography when I went for my Jamia interview, I was asked the question I was asked to name some photographers' works that I admired, or even photographers that I knew of, and I did not have an answer. I hadn't seen enough photography back then. I told them just one name. I said, I get Times of India at my house, and there's a photographer, Manoj Chabra, who gets a lot of bylines with them. And that is all that I knew about photography back then. But once we were in Jamia, I think like a lot of I don't know what is it now, but back then we were exposed to websites like Magnum, and in my laptop I had these folders with screenshots of photographs of a lot of Magnum photographers. Those names would keep changing as per my ability to understand and appreciate the works of those photographers. But I was looking at the works of Alex Webb, Trent Park. Uh, I was also there were a lot of I would say there were about 6 or 7 other photographers from Magnum whose works that I would really look at. But I think in a lot of ways, Raj, I was also trying to train myself on what a good photograph is. Because I think I knew, I mean, I would click images instinctively, but I hadn't really got any feedback on my images, you know. So in a lot of ways, I was also trying to train myself on what a good photograph is. And I think this is true for a lot of things for me, that I really, the process of response for me is a learned response. You know, it's an acquired response. Like when I read books, I would read a lot of classics, and by reading how the characters respond to situations, I would find ways to deal with my situations in life, you know. So I think in a lot of ways, my responses to things were also about educating myself on how do you really uh, deal with those. But Alex Webb is a sure shot hero. I'd be like, wow, what is this work?
Okay.
And of course, Raghurai. Of course, Raghurai. I mean, we can't deny the omnipresence.
One more question. This was your first project where Amit was somebody you were interacting with on a regular basis, right? Can you speak of the role of what that did to how you were shooting? Because you were not spending 2 months in one place and then showing your work to a mentor or to a peer. You were going every day and coming back and maybe sharing pictures daily, maybe sharing weekly. How did that, how did your vision, how did what you were responding to change on the basis of any particular advice you got?
Uh, that's an amazing question, Raj, because I think this is one of Amritsar's strength, which very few people know about. I think you know, when so when I went to meet Amritsar for the first time, and I don't think I've ever shared with him, I had seen him having a conversation with one of the photographers at the exhibition. And okay, let's begin when I entered the exhibition space. And there was this one photograph uh, of this hand coming behind from a man's head. You've seen that image, right? And then there was this other image of this really empty frame with three wires, three chairs, and a man going at the back in the snow. And at that particular time, I told myself, this is it. Okay. So he did not know, but to myself, I had decided that I want to learn from him. And I think for me, it's very important that I be able to respect and be able to mentally align with the person that I'm going to learn from. Okay.
Right.
I knew that I was looking for someone to give me direction. And that you know, his works was definitely something that appealed to me. But when the process of, you know, that mentor mentee relationship, if you might call it, uh, you know, advanced, I think what I really appreciate about his process is the fact that I've never been told that don't do this, or this is not how it happens. It was always about picking out the right things from my lot of images, you know. So a lot of times, uh, like, you would obviously see the raw images that we take, but every once in a while I would I mean, not once in a while, rather frequently, I would kind of share my own selects of images. But the way the process really helped me was, he would look at an image and he'd tell me, and he'd exactly pinpoint at one particular thing and say, this is a beautiful thing that you're doing there. All right. Or, I love how you're engaging with so and so in this way. So I think what that process did was, I'd never felt contained just by listening to someone. And you know, that's one thing that goes against my existence, which is anyone trying to contain me, you know. So I think in those ways, it really appealed to me that I was just allowed to be, and I was just being directed into the way that would lead to my practice, you know, advancing in a certain way.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Soumya. I have a question, but before that, can you just turn the slide back? Because I think it is better to look at an image than the white screen. So,
Sure. Which slide? This one?
yeah. So, see, one thought just that came to my mind is that your journey, the way you narrated it, looks like a fairy tale. That every budding photographer would love to lead that kind of. That everything started happening, every jigsaw puzzle started getting solved, and so easily. But was it that smooth? And did you face some challenges on the way? Probably, if one or two, if you want to narrate something.
I think in retrospect, it all looks nice, and obviously there are challenges, but I think once you pass those challenges, you're pretty much okay. You don't really look back at them in a really bad light or anything like that. But I think what really would bother me was the fact that I just thought I had a lot at stake when I was in Delhi, and it wasn't like, technically my family was there to back me up, but it was the sort of pressure that I had put on myself. It was the sort of pressure where I did not give myself a choice to lean back on my family, or I did not give myself a choice to probably uh, ask my dad to transfer some money in my account or things like that. But I think what would really bother me then was that when I would really want to do stuff, and when I'd really wanted to get some direction in photography and I would not get it, photography. So that hunger wasn't being satiated. And I was always, that frustration was always there as to how can I really optimize uh, my time in this place and my efforts to kind of get back what I really wanted. I think the other challenges are pretty much what everyone goes through, nothing that really would stand out, but the fact that, you're interning for free, or you're staying with relatives and relatives of relatives, and
Yeah.
stuff like you traveling on Grameen Sevas and buses, the usual stuff, nothing that would be like, oh my god, that was so difficult.
Yeah,
Can
thank you.
I ask an add-on question here, which actually I was meaning to ask in the end? May I?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
Which really is, taking off from what you just spoke about in the last couple of minutes, Soumya. Because a lot of the talks which one has attended and seen normally are people who've been, working for 25, 30 years, etc. And most of those are, the so-called self-made photographers like Amit and I and Jesse and all are. You are really one of the first few of your generation who've actually been to a photo school and thereafter been mentored, and thereafter has, got into a very productive professional career path. And this is something which I think bothers or engages a lot of young people, the question about whether they should go to a photo school or not. Since I've been involved, at least in some small way with Jamia, know the kind of environment you were talking about and the kind of inputs. But if you were to go beyond that and talk of an ideal situation, all right, because I think that is a question which a person like you would be far more qualified to answer and extrapolate upon. About if I'm 22, I finished my graduation. People told me कि sociology का history कर ली. अब मैं photography पढूं या कोशिश करूं कि हिंदुस्तान टाइम में मेरे को internship मिल जाए.
मैं इस सवाल का जवाब यूजुअली एक पर्सपेक्टिव से देती हूँ कि can you afford to go to a school? And I think in a lot of ways, and I'd like to advance this, and I would like to qualify this with something that Amit said a while ago, that while photo schools are great about the fact that they give you so much of, they expose you to so much of history of photography and give you so much perspective, which I realized is a very valid space. When I come to the field, or even when I started interning at Hindustan Times, I realized that in a lot of ways I knew about photography in a very different way. I was working in a newspaper where photographers were exposed to the work of other photojournalists, and a lot of them Indian photojournalists and a few international photojournalists, maybe a handful. But whenever I would, like, if I wanted to have a conversation about, let's say, the works of an Alex Webb or a Trent Park, nobody knew them, you know. And I think another thing that I do tell people when they're writing to me, and which is something that I realized much later, was that when you're making a choice of going to a photo school, it's also important that you see what is the faculty that is teaching there. Because eventually, when you're out in the field, it's that faculty which will be aware of that work, and it will, in a lot of ways, be involved in directing you to the necessary places in the industry, you know. And as unfortunately is an unorganized industry, you know, it runs on one-on-one connections, or it runs on people knowing people, and then people referring people, and then people further uh, you know, pointing someone to someone's work, because we're not really an organized industry. So I think in those ways it's important, like, if you can afford it, go for it, go for a photo school. If you cannot, then there are lots of other ways to go around it, you know, like there are workshops now which are short term, which are not as expensive. You know, if you're probably an engineer, then you could go for a week-long workshop or for a couple of weekends, and you could get to where you want to get. But that is how I look at it.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, that's a wonderful insight.
Thank you. So now I'll kind of fast forward to the next bit of the journey, and my presentation is hanging, so I'll just take it back. Right. So after Water the Dying Lifeline, uh, a couple of months after that, I started interning with Hindustan Times, where I went for the interview, and Gurinder sir, I think, rather excited by the same streak in my eyes or whatever it was, he agreed. I mean, so Amit sir familiarized Guri sir with my work, and Guri sir called him back saying, "वो कैसे घूरती है?" So I think after that, he, out of whatever interest he saw that I had in photography, he ended up having me for an intern. I interned there for about 4 months, and dash, there went all my expectations from photojournalism. Now, the plan that we had was, you know, photojournalism is the closest that you can get to street photography and documentary photography, which I was then doing, and still be able to earn money, which is why the choice of photojournalism. But then somewhere when you're doing photojournalism, you do think that it's a very important profession, that it's going to make a lot of difference, that it's going to have a lot of impact. But my 4 months at Hindustan Times negated this belief. But what it also did was, you know, while as a photographer, the way I had been trained by Amit sir, and the way that I always looked at photography, which was so deeply ingrained in light composition, as a photojournalist, I was really struggling to find or to make sense of what photojournalism was, because for photojournalism, it's the content that is the most important thing, right? Whenever anything is unfolding in front of you, the most thing in photojournalism is to have a photograph of that, irrespective. I mean, composition, if you have composition and everything in place, that's great. But even if you don't have it, if you have the moment, that's the paramount thing. So I think I did struggle a lot uh, with making sense of what photography was and what photojournalism would entail. But like I say, that every once in a while, photojournalism will throw one of these assignments at you, which you'll realize is the purpose of why you do photojournalism, and which is why you kind of hang around in photojournalism. I did have my period of trial and tribulations with photojournalism, when I thought if this is what I really wanted to do, or you know, if this is something that's even meant for me. And with also in the Indian newsrooms, with all the dynamics of, you know, the entire, I mean, just between, I mean, to let everyone know, like, uh, Indian publications are very political places to be in, you know. So in a lot of ways, you're taken away from the romanticization of photography and you put in this space which is very competitive, which is very you get a taste of the world there. And after 4 months of interning there, Guri sir was nice and kind enough. I don't know if I refused to leave and then he was like, okay, I might as well just hire this woman or what it was. But he hired me for the job, and there I was getting a very close brush with photojournalism and doing a lot of assignments every day. One thing that photojournalism does teach you is that it teaches you to be an assignment photographer. Now, these are two very different things. Being able to take good photographs is one thing, and being able to be an assignment photographer is quite another. And this is a discipline that photojournalism teaches you. The only virtue in photojournalism is if you are able to take out photographs from an assignment, you know, even if you have 5 minutes at a spot, you need to be able to take out photographs. And that discipline, and then, you know, then the entire discipline of coming back to the office and then making a selection of your photographs, filing the photographs is all a very quick process. And it really puts a certain discipline in you. And that was an incredible learning that I was having at photojournalism. And with, you know, someone like Guri sir, uh, who, like, you know, he had his ways of pushing me whenever I was kind of like getting low on what I was really doing there. So I think with that sort of guidance around, photojournalism was really teaching me a lot. But somewhere I was questioning myself on, again, what was the direction in photography that I was really taking. Because when you are working at a newspaper, you're shooting, I mean, I'm going to name some of the assignments that I just don't like doing at all now. Weather, daily life, broken roads, uh, broken sewers. And I was like, you know, I don't care about these. Yeah, I want to do better things with photography, with photojournalism. But and the day I left my job, by the way, and after that was the first time in 4 years that I really enjoyed a rain, because I looked at it and I thought to myself, I don't have to shoot it, you know. And I thought about the person who had replaced me, and I was like, poor Anushree, she must be shooting rain today. Having said that, I think I was again starting to question what's the direction in photography that I'm taking. And in one particular assignment happened at HT, I was asked to go to this place called Mayapuri. Now, I hadn't been to Mayapuri before in my life, and I hadn't been to any sort of a place that even resembled anything close to that. When I got there, when I was there just for a few minutes, I got a call saying that, you know, you can skip that assignment. You need to head somewhere else. But I had kept my foot into this place that I was really in awe of. You know, there was this place which was actually made of of vehicular parts. You know, of gears, of axles, of all these parts. And that is the structure that the place had, and I had never seen anything close to that. When I was asked to leave, I was kind of disappointed, but I think somewhere the fascination of the place remained. And then there was this grant called the Neil Dongre Photography Grant, which came out at that point of time, and the theme of it was recycling. And I got, selected as one of the grantees for that award. And I decided to work on Mayapuri. And this gave me the opportunity to go back to this place that I was so fascinated with, because, you know, there would be cars which would practically be sitting on rooftops. There would be there was no pedestrian paths there, you know. The pedestrian paths were vehicular paths. You obviously could not walk on them, but that was the structure of the place. So that is how my engagement with Mayapuri began. And I began following the life of a vehicle, right from the stage to when it came to a scrapyard to its ultimate stage where it's recycled. The very fascinating part was, look at these people, you know, they're so bored. And here I was in awe of everything that was shaping up in front of me, the pure materiality of the place, of how it had an entire different definition. And for the people who were working there, it was so mundane, you know, they were so unmoved by everything around that. And those those were the kind of engagements that started happening between Mayapuri and me and the entire space around that place. It was obviously, I would obviously be the only woman in that space all the time, and I would obviously arouse the curiosity of the people there. But the fact that, I was so young, I could people people could really trust me, and they would allow me to photograph that, because for a lot of other photographers, they tried to photograph it, but they could not get access because the people there would always be suspicious of what they were doing. I like the fact that how for these people they were kind of playing with these materials. Who could imagine that there would, I mean, you see all these buildings, and when I'm walking there, I couldn't even imagine that the terraces could look anything close to what they were looking. And then there were people like Brijesh, who you'll see in a photograph later, who for those guys, it was at the end of the day their workplace. So every day in the morning they would come and they would light incense sticks, which would fill their shops, and there were these secondhand parts which would be sold there. And so I started to engage and delve in this fascinating place and kind of make sense of what was really happening, and try to have my own stories and involvements with this place. Eventually all these cars would be crumbled and made into these squarish bales, which would then be sent to places in Baddi. This is a furnace in Baddi where all the metal scrap goes, and eventually it is put into a furnace, and then what comes out of it is cast iron, and thus a new cycle of a vehicle begins.
Can I ask a question here?
Yes, please.
I'm obviously old school, but I keep hearing about how impactful photojournalism, for instance, is usually black and white. But I've been following your work for the last few years, and I find that you almost entirely work in color, much to my great pleasure. What do you think of that?
I'm millennial. I haven't used a black and white camera. My only engagement with black and white is through the eyes of other people, which is why, I mean, I really find it difficult to see things in black and white, and I'm being very honest about it. It's not a language that is my language, which is why sometimes it does occur to me, do I want to try, and I do try off and on. None of that work is out there, but every once in a while I'll try to put on my black and white filter on my phone and shoot on that. But that's not how I see things. I think if I would have shot on film, and if I had shot on a black and white film, the way I would engage with the world would be very different. But I unfortunately haven't had that privilege.
Have you shot on film? I'm curious. I'm sorry to be averting here, but these are.
I've shot exactly 2 rolls of films in my life.
Amit didn't insist that you should show 50 rolls of film and be disciplined. And I think that's a quasi-serious question, actually.
No, may I answer that?
Please.
I normally don't do that because for me, I understand the very part of economics, and I think we have discussed this in the last talk with Jesse ji also. It's very important to have a digital camera these days, and it's a luxury. It's not a, I would say the film camera is a luxury, but what one can do for the discipline, and what I normally do with my students, I ask them to, or rather I suggest them to treat the digital camera as film camera. And the very simple way, just switch off the LCD screen or put a black tape on the LCD screen and just don't look at it, what you have been seeing. Don't be so curious. Don't be so impatient. Because at the end of the day, what the film camera was all about, it used to push your mental faculty to work on, so that because there is nothing as preview this thing called preview in front of you. So it always allowed you, or it rather pushed you to push your mental faculty, and then your imagination, your thought process. So use that. And digital to me is a huge advantage as far as the economics is concerned. And that's one of the reasons the entire world is doing photography these days, which is good or bad both. But at the same time, one can easily have that discipline of film just by doing the simple exercise.
If I can just
Please.
add something over here, uh, I was actually thinking about the same question, not because you may not have started off with black and white film, but there is a tendency even today amongst photographers our age and younger who uh, work on documentary projects in black and white. Black and white is still far more common, at least as a language, than color. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a qualitative judgment. But the reason why my early question to you was to try and find out your photographic inspirations was because I was actually trying to see that, you started off with color. At least your first major work with the water project. It's not only photographs that are shot in color, but also very fine use of color. And that's why I was trying to understand, was it the visual inspiration around you that led you to not even consider black and white? Because I think the black and white color thing is not about not having used black and white film. I think even today amongst photographers in their early 20s or late 20s, they tend to a lot of us tend to use black and white for anything that's documentary.
You know,
Yeah, that just one sentence to what Raj is saying is that the point he made about black and white being a language. I've been that very. I also agree with that 150%. As much as color being a language, then of course is the romance of black and white. The other, of course, is that the historicity of I need to look like a serious photographer because serious photographers speak in black and white. Uh, so it's all of these things come together. And the point that Raj made about asking you, in terms of your influences, if the influences were deeply black and white language written, would they have made a difference? So that's the kind of thing I was trying to understand because from my generation, for instance, I have been seen as a very rare full color photographer, and not just full color but technicolor, और ये तो बिल्कुल हिंदी फिल्म के रंग लेके आता है अपनी फोटो में. So I've been always very curious about, so how is it that people speak, and I really believe that what Raj was saying, speak in black and white or speak in color, is it deliberate? Is it instinctive? Is it something which comes from inspiration? Is it influence? Maybe we can have a separate session on this entirely. I don't want to break Soumya's chain of thought, but it is very striking that she does such powerful work where you expect someone who sees things so powerfully to be, but it's black and white making me photo, So I just want to leave it there actually.
Raj, for a matter of fact, I was looking at works of Trent Park then. And, Trent Park has this series, which the name of which I can't remember, but which has some amazing use of light. And he does that in black and white. And I think there was a time in my Jamia days when I also tried to do it. But for myself, I did not enjoy my photographs in black and white. And for me, I thought it was taking away from my experience of looking at my photographs in black and white.
Right.
I don't know if it was coming from some point of lack of education on black and white or lack of aesthetic for it. And, in fact, just yesterday, I was trying to shoot something in a black and white filter to see how that goes because that I've been shifting out of my house and I've been trying to photograph the entire process. And I thought for a project like this, if I were ever to step or try black and white, I thought this would be a good time, because at the end of the day, I'm talking about memory, and I'm talking about some keeping something for posterity, right? And I thought if it had to be this choice, it was this project that would justify this choice. But that's something that I'm still grappling with. I still don't know how to make sense of my images in black and white.
Fair enough. Yep.
It's a very interesting topic. We can go on, but please, Soumya, I will talk about it later. But please, you carry
I
on.
think we need to come back, Soumya.
It's a very, very interesting topic. What Raj has put here.
I think we can have a separate panel discussion away from this sometime later on.
Yeah.
We can organize that. Yeah.
Please, Soumya, carry on.
I'm sorry about this. The presentation is hanging. So what eventually, while I was still working at Hindustan Times, and while Hindustan Times was in this phase of going digital, and while everybody talked about how print is dead and how digital is the new thing, one thing that I was really for all the photojournalists in the department, it was a big deal that they would get printed. And with all the politics there, and with all the hierarchy in terms of your experience in photography, my number or my turn in doing a credible project was kind of way back, because I was the junior most in the team. So it wasn't very easy to get the important projects if you were that junior in the team. So I had started to focus on digital, and digital came to me as such an opportunity, because I realized that while print, if a story was going in print, they would just use one photograph and somebody on the desk would crop it to a 2-column or 3-column, depending on what their page and design was like. For digital, I had the luxury to experiment. So it wasn't just about that one image, and it gave me the luxury to be able to explore things around what was really happening, and that would often make it to digital. And this was also the time when we had a new photo editor a new editor-in-chief at Hindustan Times, Bobby Ghosh, who was coming in from working at international publications, and he increasingly understood the value of having good visuals in publications, which is a place where Indian publications really lack. I think in Indian publications, visuals are always very illustrative and an afterthought to the story. The reason that they want visuals is because they think if there's a visual, it'll get people's attention to read the story. So that's the kind of importance that visuals usually have in Indian publications. But then having someone who's who's exposed, who's worked with the likes of Franco Paghetti, Yuri Kozyrev, who were kind of people that that I idolized. And here there was Bobby Ghosh, who said, oh yeah, I was on this assignment and I was sharing a room with Yuri. So, you're talking about someone who'd been exposed to these works and who'd been exposed to these ethics in visual literacy. So we got the space and time to do a lot of photo essays and a lot of photo projects over a longer period of time. One day, Guri sir came to the photo department after the morning meeting, and he said, Bobby wants something on transportation. I stayed shut. I was like, so that was the time when I had started working on something. I had got a new iPhone 5S, and now because I had such an expensive phone, I had to justify buying it, so I was like, now I have to shoot something from it. So every time I would go in the Delhi metro, I would start just shooting something on the phone. And I was shooting square format because it was also exciting to be shooting something apart from the standard format of 24 by 36. So I was shooting this, but the thing with my personal projects is that being a photojournalist, you see very callous things happening to your photographs. My photographs have been made cutouts of. They would be cropped, and they would be done things with which I had no control over. And in a lot of ways, I had become detached with how my photo was engaging with the audience when I was at a newspaper. The moment I had filed the images, I would forget about it. Unless I knew that there was a desk editor who was kind of editing the story. तो मतलब जाते थे उनके पास और दोस्ती यारी में यार ये फोटो लगा दे, and they'd be like no this isn't a photo that would work, and we'd be like यार दोस्त की बात नहीं मानेगी, and stuff like that. So you just find your way to get your photographs out there when you could. But in a lot of ways, working at an Indian publication teaches you to be detached with your photographs. So in that setup, my personal projects were the thing that was closest to my heart, and that was one thing that I wasn't willing to give anyone else the control of. So when this happened, I was in a fix. I was like, this is a personal project, and I don't want anyone else to guide me on how to do and what to do out of it. But after, when Guri sir had spoken to every photographer about what we can do, he came to me and I said, you know what, sir, I'm doing something, but I would want to continue exploring it the way I have been exploring it. And then I told him that I've basically been photographing on the phone on the Delhi metro. And Guri sir, being Guri sir, he said, "Haan, kar le putter, jaake dekh le." So the next 1 month was an incredible time, because whenever I would get time, I would just hop onto the metro and I would just take any random metro and I would head in any random direction till the time I'd get a call from the office saying, "Where are you? We have an assignment." And that's how Delhi in transit happened. Uh, Now, again, the context for this work is that I'm a person coming in from Lucknow who's come to Delhi and who's absolutely fascinated with what Delhi is. I would be wide-eyed about why people like dress up so loudly, or why are there a certain aesthetic or a taste that they have, because like every state has its own visual language and visual aesthetics, and Delhi was sort of a shocker for me. I could not understand the fashion senses of people. I would be very curious about, like in Delhi, if you have money, the first thing that you do is show it off. If you go to smaller towns, you don't even know if people have money. And I think that's the way Delhi is, and that's true for every people from every strata of the place, which is why you'll see, even if people can't afford proper housing and proper living, they'll still dress up well, which I think in a way is great, and which in a way I've also come to admire. But for that person still trying to make sense of what Delhi was, this was my way of engaging with Delhi, which was through the Delhi metro. I think in a lot of ways uh, I was also responding to these fashion statements that I would see, you know, and like this lady sitting like this, it would remind me of my mom. That's exactly how probably not every, but most of the women her age would sit, right? And then there is this man who's probably come back from a really bad day at work, and in the middle of, and at the Delhi metro, he's just doing this little breathing exercise to calm him down. And thus began my engagement with people, which was obviously voyeuristic. And Guri sir and me had a chat about how we wanted to be safe about it. So we decided to not show faces of the people, so that we do not, the issues of consent is not something that arise there. And this was something that I eventually did. And also, Delhi metro is a place where you can't photograph, right? So which technically translates to the fact that you can't shoot on a digital, a professional camera. But if you're shooting selfies, if you're shooting on phone, no one really minds it. Thus my choice of medium, which was my phone camera. And over a period of time, I started seeing these shapes and these social comments and these uh, uh, patterns and ways of life in those little things, these fancy pants, or the how worn out people would be after days of work, the the chaos of what we say the karm bhumi, because if you're there, you have to really make ends meet. That's the only way to survive in a place as big as a metro city, as the capital of India. And you obviously have people coming in from all stratas of society who will come into this place. And Delhi metro is a great leveler. People from so many different economic backgrounds will all come together. They'll have, everyone in a lot of ways have clothes which are similar, because they've all been probably bought from Sarojini Market or Lajpat Nagar, and you'll see these repeated patterns. in the clothes people wear, in the fashion statements that they have. There are so many repetitions everywhere. Like imagine these bags and these shoes. I can't ever imagine wearing them. And my response to address it was to photograph it, and thus became a very fun story of how I tried to make better sense of this place that was Delhi.
Nice. Very nice.
I sometimes also say that this work can be borderline offensive, because in a lot of ways,
Nice.
I'm photographing people I'm like by photographing them, I'm questioning them. I mean, it's about, for example, their choice of fashion. It's when I don't understand that choice of fashion at all that I'll choose to photograph it. So which is why I also sometimes say that this work can be borderline offensive. Any questions about this work?
Yeah, I have one, if may I ask.
Yes, please, sir.
You just said something, when you work in a publication, and especially when you work in an Indian publication, you tend to detach with your work, which I have also gone through with my very short span, 1990. And that time, I don't think I was that sensitive enough to uh, understand that detachment part. But yes, you're always in the awe of your photo editor and always looking at him, say, please print my picture, please print my picture, that kind of thing. But the statement what you made, you get detached with your work while you're working in your in publication. My question is, what is the point when a photographer realizes, and it's not about working in Indian publication or foreign publication, or when a photojournalist or when a photographer who's working on documentary project as well as on photojournalist, when he or she realizes what is the time when your personal work and your assigned work gets blurred?
Uh, First, I'd just like to add something to what you said. When I say that I get detached to my work, what I'm really trying to say is I get detached to the process after I file my images.
Fair enough. That's
right?
exactly what. Yeah, that's
But
exactly where it goes.
yeah, taking on your question, I think I realized this much later. I realized the value of the blurring lines only when I received the Getty Images Instagram grant, and I'll tell you why. Because uh, for me, every day that I'm going on photojournalistic assignments, I'm doing those stories and I'm doing them at very short time frames. A part of me is always urging to go back and always irking to engage with those stories in a better way. But after I, received the grant, so also one thing that happens in these times is that unless in our industry is that people don't really like a lot of people, I won't say people in general, but a lot of people will not value your work till the time it has received some accolades, right? And once I received the Getty Images Instagram grant, I realized that all this body of work that I was doing in photojournalism, which for me were everyday assignments, and a lot of times I was cribbing about why am I not getting more time with it, or why am I leaving this assignment for other assignments, were the building blocks of my personal project. Because I realized that a lot of people, because I did, after I received the grant, I was working at Reuters at that point of time. And soon after, I started getting assignments with international publications. And the value that international publications see in your work is through the fact that, you're able, like good photographs are great, but you should always also be able to deliver. And in those ways, with international publications, you get sort of a little more time on stories, and sometimes you have the luxury of even more time on stories than Indian publications. And that's when you realize that while my personal project is allowing me to engage with all these stories, with the stories that I'm doing in a with much more depth, my photojournalism stories are exposing me to so many more realities of my society, which are adding up to how I am engaging with my documentary projects. They're informing my choices of my documentary projects.
So it is the time factor which takes away the intensity of the work in your personal or in anybody's. I'm talking about a photographer who deals with both the genres of documentary as well as the photojournalism. So it is the time factor that takes away the intensity of the work from the personal, what we see in the personal work, and then when we see the assigned work.
What do you mean in terms
Is
of
it the time factor, the time which the publications don't allow photographers to engage with the subject? It is merely the time factor that, I mean, obviously it's one of the main
I
reasons.
think time is one of the factors. And I also would like to say that I think my experience personally is a little different because coming from a space where I was, looking at works of magnum photographers and then being trained under you, I did have a very different perspective on what I wanted to do with my photography, right? If I was doing a photojournalistic assignment, time was obviously one of the factors, but the other factor also was, what will my photo editor say? And it's not just about photo editors. With someone as junior as me, all the 13, 14 photographers who are more senior than me will have something to tell me about my photography. And I think unconsciously you start responding to those needs just because of the fact that you don't want to hear those comments, or also because of the fact that I did not want the fact that I'm having to restrict my photography according to the opinions of 10 people wasn't an idea that appealed to me. Like I have a few set of people whose opinions that I take seriously, and whose opinions in when it comes to my photography I would really count. And I think that is what's the most important to me. I think otherwise, that's something that I practice myself. When photographers come with their works and show me their works, I try not to comment on their work, because I know for someone who's so young and who's so impressionable, anything that a senior photographer says is something that people really take to heart. And I do think that not everyone is a great critique of another photographer's works. You might be a great photographer, but you might not necessarily be a great critique of the other person's photographers. And I do think that that kind of measures with the person's own photographic journey. Yeah.
Okay.
Should I?
Yeah, please carry on.
There is one question from Namrata on YouTube, and this is regarding when you said that you left the job and then when it rained and you were explaining that, so it pertains to that. So as a part of assignment, then didn't you enjoy your stint there, or was it more of a job and less of your love for passion of photography? So what was going on in your mind?
It was a love hate, and it was more of hate than it was love. It was only in retrospect that I started to value my time at HT and with Reuters and in full-time photojournalism so much. But believe me, 70% of the time I was cribbing when I was doing those assignments. But every now and then, I think while the cribbing was so much about the entire politics of being in a publication, you're trying to negotiate with yourself what is it that you want to do with photography, because there are so many people telling you what to do with it, and you're in such a state of confusion on what is it that you're doing right or what you're doing wrong, that I think it's a very intense process. And also the mere fact of doing something you love is great, but when you have to do that for 6 days a week, and sometimes I was doing it for 7 days a week, because, for example, in the biography of Xtra, when I was going to Mayapuri, I was working at HT, right? So the only time I would get was to go there on weekends, or sometimes, because photojournalists don't get paid enough, so whenever I wanted that extra income, I would kind of take freelance gigs, which, by the way, my HT contract did not allow me, but I did it anyways. I would take the freelance gigs to make a little extra money. So when you love something, you want to do it on your own terms. But when that love is being done on the terms of uh, clients and of probably desk editors who are not even visually literate, it becomes a very difficult negotiation. And which is why, to retain that love of photography, you lean back on your personal projects, because in that chaos of a job, I mean, even now I say that, at the end of the day, I now look out for more hobbies, because photography is obviously very personal, but it is what I do for a living also, and which is why, sorry?
Nothing.
Which is why, it's also very important for me to have something which is free from the burden of expectations, or free from the burden of finances, or whatever. And having said that, that doesn't that doesn't mean that I've lost my interest in photography. That only means that photography takes up so much of me that I also want to have other places that I can draw my energy from.
Just on a lighter note, I would say, when the photo editor or the desk editor gives a assignment to a photographer, and if the youngest one is sitting there and not doing anything, the first line, and as I have seen with myself also, and I'll give you an example what I used to ask from Soumya. So when the youngest one is sitting, and I'm just answering the question what Namrita asked, वो खाली बैठा होता है तो उससे कहते हैं अगर एचटी का ऑफिस कनॉट प्लेस में, यार जरा नीचे जाओ और देख के वेदर कैसा है और वेदर शूट कर लेगा। तो कुछ नहीं है, खाली बैठा हुआ है ना, तो जाके वेदर शूट कर ला। अब वो डेली का उसको एक ही बीट दे देंगे, तू क्या करना है, यू गो एंड शूट वेदर। सो एवरी डे you go and shoot weather. So photographer obviously, at the end of the day वो पक ही जाएगा बेचारा, he will lose interest in photography. So I used to call Soumya, and I have started calling her a weather specialist. So I used to call her and say, okay, आज मौसम कैसा रहेगा बेटा, बताना जरा। So obviously, it's going to be a point of saturation. And what is the assignment? Of course, if there is a thunderstorm, there is a possibility of making a picture now. But if the temperature is 45 and every day in Delhi, the entire month of June is going to be 45, so what the hell photographer will get a picture out of that? But that is the grinding of work of newspaper. That is the plus point, or the positive point of that is the photographer gets so tough that in any or every situation he can get a picture. But yes, so there are both the sides, but there can be a point of saturation. Okay, why me only weather every day? So that is there. Anyway, please carry on.
Also, when you're working in a newspaper, and like where I was working, because you're a photographer, and because in the Indian setup, photographers don't have a lot of respect in Indian publications. So if a reporter wants a passport size photograph, they'll come to you and they'll ask you to click it. Or if there is some in-house event happening, you'll be asked to go and shoot, and because you're the junior most, it'll be your job to take care of it. So I think a lot of love of photography gets mitigated in that entire process and politics of it. But I think what makes it better are the people who still believe in the work that you do. For example, if there's still someone like Guri sir who would call, like if he had a project which he thought that I could add value to, without discussing it with anyone else, he'd just call me and ask me, this is a project, you want to do it? And I think it's the people who really believe in your work who help you to advance it in the direction that it benefits.
Wonderful.
Should I carry forward?
Please.
Okay. Sorry about this again. Okay, this is the last set of images that I'm showing, and it is so. So it's a jump. After Hindustan Times, I moved on to working at Reuters. I worked at Reuters for about 9 months before I started freelancing with international publications. And the work that I'm showing now is one of my most recent works with National Geographic on COVID-19. So when the entire when India started to respond to the virus and to the number of cases that came to India, on 24th of March, a nationwide lockdown was announced. And our Prime Minister requested everyone to stay put wherever they were. But for many people in India, staying put is not an option. You know, for this huge migrant population, they're working in cities, and staying put in cities is a lot of additional cost which they cannot afford if they're out of work. And thus started this major uh, reverse migration of people from bigger cities back to their villages. So I was on the road. I traveled about 1,200 kilometers in and around Lucknow, where I was when the lockdown happened. And I was basically documenting everything that was happening, while there was all the drama of the metros and how, you know, people were really struggling to just get one meal a day. I was able to go to
What is this picture? I'm sorry to interrupt you. But this picture.
this is basically all right, I'll just go back to this. This is basically ASHA workers who are out. And so in rural India, uh, now how do you explain to these populations what's really happening? You know, we haven't seen anything like this in recent history. And the idea of a virus which can potentially kill is something that for a lot of people in the rural areas who are not even educated enough to understand the science of it, how do you communicate it to them? So in rural India, it became a case of hand washing. It became about how you needed to hand wash every time, and you needed to wash your hands really thoroughly. So every time an ASHA worker would go to a house, she would wash her hands and she would demonstrate this is how you're supposed to dry them. You should not use any cloth to dry them. And another description of the virus, which was very interesting, was गांव में लोगों से बोला जाता था कि आपके घर के बाहर एक कीड़ा है और वो कीड़ा आपको मार सकता है, तो सबको घर के अंदर रहना है और सबको हाथ बहुत धोना है. And this is how rural India learned about the virus. Obviously, the other side were all the migrants who were out on the roads, who would then come back and who would educate the people about what was happening.
Quite an interesting picture, especially there is a temple behind. Huh? Looks
Yeah,
like
the
they're doing
namaz.
namaz.
This was a quarantine center. From Aligarh, 109 migrants got into one truck and traveled overnight. They stood all night and they traveled overnight to come back to their homes in Bihar. But they were intercepted in Lucknow and they were quarantined in this huge isolation center. This gentleman was and his colleagues were coming back from Jaipur. They've been riding on cycles for 6 days, sometime going without sleep for all this time, just to get back home. Uh, I would actually, I'm taking it out from the play preview because I want to talk about these images a little more. So finally, when on Labor Day, these special trains were announced to take back all the migrants home, obviously no other trains were running, and you had these huge populations that were coming back. So this is at the Lucknow railway station, and this was stuff of war movies. Okay, the entire railway station had no passengers, but about 50 people, 50 staffs of the railways and of the security forces, some of them in their PPE suits. And then the announcement was made of this train arriving from Nasik, and came in this train with all the people peeping out of the train because they did not know what to expect. They did not know what was happening out there. And you could, it was dystopic, you know. You could see the fear in their eyes. You could see that there were people who had been quarantined in Nasik. So, you know, that danger was not there of probably them having, you know, like probably coming here and they have not been tested. These guys were tested. But still, when they came out, a lot of them were, you know, they did not have water to drink because they ran out of water. Some of them did not have enough food and they were getting down. They were being social distance and they were being cute. And for one thing, I did not think that UP could pull off a stunt like that, because you know Uttar Pradesh has such discipline issues, but it was really managed well, and people were really queued up properly, and they were really you know, there were these buses that were waiting outside for them to take them to their respective villages. And you know, the mask actually made me focus on their eyes. I think that wasn't something that I was seeing myself till the time those people came in front of me. I could see the intensity in their eyes with the rest of their faces being covered. And people were obviously hitchhiking on trucks or whatever they were finding so that they could get back home. Obviously, in these places, there was no social distancing. And in all of this, the agriculture and the economy was severely impacted. There were fewer people who were working outdoors, but you could still see them. A very interesting incident that happened while I was on this assignment was I was returning from Kanpur, and I was actually returning from Fatehpur, and I was crossing Kanpur to come to Lucknow, and it was about 7:38 at night. So it was obviously dark, and we were on the highway. We saw a lot of migrants standing on the side. So we pulled up our car, and me and the fixer, we stepped out and, you know, to see what was happening. And there were cops who were trying to talk to these migrants. The moment they saw me with a camera, the uh, the cop who was I think he was the SI there, he got very hassled. His statement was, मीडिया वाले आ गए, अब इन लोग को मरने दो, जो करना है करेंगे, हम इनकी मदद नहीं करेंगे. And I was like, sir, आप क्यों कह रहे हैं ऐसा? क्या मतलब, I'm not here to, you know, do any story on you. We're doing story on the state of migrants, and there's no way that your name's going to pop up. I practically joined my hands and I begged him to help the migrants and help them in whatever they were doing. The guy was fortunately a well-read guy, you know. So when I did that, he said, you know, you're the age of my daughter, please don't do that. But if you talk to these people, you'll realize कि हर एक आदमी यहाँ पे जो खड़ा है वो प्रेमचंद के अध्याय का एक कैरेक्टर है. आप इनसे बात करके देखिए, लोग हैं जो हजार किलोमीटर दूर से आए हैं अपने बीवी अपने बच्चों को लेके. उनको नहीं पता है कि वो घर कैसे जाएंगे. वो पैदल है, और अगर वो कोविड के मारे नहीं मरे, अगर वो वायरस के मारे नहीं मरे, तो वो इस जर्नी में मर सकते हैं. एक पार्टीशन हुआ था 1947 का, और दूसरा पार्टीशन के समय जो माइग्रेशन थी एक तब की थी और दूसरी अब है. और इतने लोग इसमें मरेंगे जिनके बारे में आपको पता भी नहीं चलेगा. एंड आई थिंक दैट वाज वन पॉइंट वेयर you know, I realized that he was a person with whom I could reason and I could have a conversation. I told him I'm taking a few pictures and I will not show his face, and there will be no way that, you know, he'll get into trouble. I left him my number and I told him that if he gets into any sort of trouble, he should call me. Next day he did call me, laughing away, saying that, oh, nothing happened, there's nothing in the newspaper, thank you for that, and do come and have a cup of tea whenever you're crossing next. But what I want to say that, you know, the migration situation that happened this time, each of these people were nothing short of heroes or legends. You know, I can't even imagine undertaking a journey of that scale. And here are these people who've been pushed to that level of desperation just to get a roof over their heads and to have 2 meals a day, or maybe just 1 meal a day. But for them, it was a question of absolute survival, and that was the only option that they had. And then there were all these unsung heroes. You know, a police in our country does not have very good reputation, but then there were all these people who were very sensitive to what was happening, and they were finding ways to ensure that these people really get to where they wanted to get, and that they can help in whatever ways that they can. And I think in those ways, while everything around the virus has been so negative and has been so depressing, it was the story of people like these that still made me believe that we will probably sail through this. So that is all that I wanted to show everyone today. Happy to take questions.
Sir.
I thought you're taking the question from audience. I have a very simple question. If you have a question from audience, please take. Otherwise, I'll ask.
There are a couple of questions probably. I think it is more on the. Okay, there's one by Alric Fernandez, and he's asking that in the context of Indian agencies and publishers, is it better to work on personal projects and pitching them, or is it better to start as a freelancer for news agencies while working on personal projects?
Okay. So there are two things. One thing is, if you're looking for a job with an agency, you get hired on the basis of your personal projects, but you'll probably never get a chance to do that while you're working with them. When it comes to freelancing with them, usually if you have your contacts and if the editors in the agency are aware of your work, at least at Reuters where I've worked with, they would like to commission you. So the usual process is that you pitch them a story, and if they like you and if they're aware with your works and if they've worked with you in the past, then they'll probably commission you for the story when they like it. I haven't really pitched as much to agencies to be able to know if they still take up personal projects of people and publish it. I would not know about that, but I certainly have seen a lot of people who have pitched their stories to Reuters, and Reuters has decided to commission them.
Yeah, that's good. And there are a couple of more questions. One is by Namrata pertaining to the recent incident that you shared about this policeman and also
About policeman,
this,
okay,
this
yeah.
guy during this migration thing, that taking the same scenario, if you were actually working for media, how would you have reported or reacted?
I was reporting it for National Geographic, so I was actually doing it for media. I think one of the luxuries of being a freelancer or being out to do these stories and working with international publications is that they are kind of sensitive to the situations. Like, there are certain ethics that we have to follow, which are the baseline. One of which is that we cannot monetarily help the people that we photographing, because that's a conflict of interest. But I took the liberty to carry extra food with me, because I knew that a lot of people who were there would probably not have eaten, and I was carrying extra food and I was distributing that. And I think and I let the photo editors know that I've engaged in something like that, and they were pretty happy for me to do that. Also, having said that, I think one sort of photojournalism, I think that I'm not the best photojournalist in the traditional sense. Uh, I don't think I'm a great spot news photographer. I'm very good with. I really enjoy working on stories, and I really enjoy engaging with people and exploring more about them and the environments. But I'll probably not do the best of the jobs at Spot News. You have some tremendous photojournalists in the field who do that. So the situation on how you must deal with it and report on it. For example, I could imagine some newspaper guy would probably make a video out of it, or probably do a snippet out of it and say that, hey, this is a police guy who's not, who's helping, who's going against the government regulations and helping these guys, and then these guys are not following social distancing and all of that. But I think that's not the kind of journalism that I am personally interested in. I'm personally interested in doing something that is more longer term and has a larger narrative or story or issue that it is trying to address.
Thank you. I think, yeah. So Jay had asked actually in the beginning when you were talking about your part of Yamuna part of the presentation. So I missed that question at that point of time. So Jay Thakur is asking that, do you think that its authority or we as a society are more responsible for the status of rivers today?
For sure. And I think that's also an evolution that's happened over time. You know, historically in India, water bodies were maintained by communities. But once, you know, you had the Britishers come in and they started taxing these water bodies, people kind of got detached. They like, when we paying for the tax anyways, why do we take care of it? And that's how that entire evolution happened of people detaching themselves or taking personal responsibilities of taking care of these common assets. So we as people are certainly responsible for it. But I refuse to deny the responsibility of the authorities and of the people responsible to be able to implement those norms as well.
I mean, it's a good answer, but at my end, there's an extended question on that. That India, the way I look at it is, India is a country where when we talk about rivers, even when we go to Varanasi and Ghats and all, don't you think that people who are using it for whatever they are actually not aware of the kind of damage that they might be doing even by washing clothes in them? So don't you think that it is actually boils down to the responsibility of the authorities to really educate people firsthand?
That's what I'm saying. I refuse to deny I cannot let the authority free of responsibility of maintaining it, because we have to admit we haven't been able to impart education to a major part of our populations, and you can't expect them to be very aware of what's the civil behavior or what is good and what is bad. And it's the responsibilities of these authorities to ensure that people are communicated that.
Right.
I'm a journalist, so please pardon me for being anti-government and anti-government institutions.
No. It's nothing about anti-government. So we are trying to stay away from that part now.
Yeah, I just think it's healthy to question authority.
I think that's the role of any citizen. Why just a journalist?
True.
Well, most journalists today aren't anti-government ever, but anyway, let's not get into that. Soumya, I wanted to ask you one question, Jassi ji, if I may interject.
Yes.
With this last work that you showed, it's a tough time that we are all going through, you know, as citizens, as healthcare workers, us being a lot more privileged than several others. But I keep thinking of, someone like James Nathway has spoken of the fact that he has battled PTSD on several occasions, post-traumatic stress disorder. Gary Knight has spoken about it. Ron Haviv has spoken about it. Now, these are, of course, photographers who have worked in conflict zones, who photograph wars. We have several brave photojournalists who've done the same, even in Kashmir. But even for the life of a regular photojournalist, and I don't mean regular in a pejorative way, but news is often bad news, right? And how difficult does it get from a psychological perspective, from a mental health perspective, that you're photographing a bomb blast today, and then somebody, a migrant worker who has no food tomorrow, and then the Delhi riots after that, and an attack on a college after that. How difficult is it from a mental health perspective? Or does it become that after a point, a reporter and a photographer both get desensitized that, okay, this is one more violent news, because as viewers, often we also get desensitized.
Uh, I'm so glad that we're at a stage when we can have these conversations because I've worked in a newspaper and uh, obviously things are very different in various publications. But speaking specifically to the Delhi photojournalism space where I've worked, it's a very macho space, okay? And people do not talk about emotions there. And one of the photojournalists once told me that, and he told me this to me when Ravi Kanoja, who is a photojournalist who lost his life while he was shooting an assignment. So after that, he told me that, I thought I was very strong. I've shot so many assignments and I've never cried, but this incident broke me down. And at that point of time, I realized that probably the day when I stopped feeling, I should not photograph anymore, because the reason I'm a photographer, the reason I would like to believe that we are artists, despite the fact what a lot of people say, but I think I'm an artist because I feel. If I cannot feel, I don't think I'm doing much justice to what I'm doing. And while there are so many photojournalistic spaces where the space for this conversation does not exist, I am a strong believer in the need to have this conversation. And I myself undergo counseling because, and I was having this conversation with my counselor where where she said that it looks like when all these young girls and boys or young men and women are getting into this field, and photojournalism or just journalism is a very intense experience. Even if you're a beat reporter, just the amount of misery that you see, if you're a beat reporter and probably you're doing whatever MCD and you're taking feedback from random people, every day at least one person will cry to you about something or would be really sad about something. And uh, it does, either you can be very insensitive to it, or it can really move you in very different ways. But I think this is very real, and this is a topic on which we need to have so much more conversations, because our organizations do not address it. Our organizations do not tell us what is the mature way to deal with it and how should we address it. Some, like when I was working at Reuters, they started this peer uh, peer counseling sessions where if you've gone, for example, if you've reported on the Rohingya crisis and you're coming back with all this baggage of everything that you've seen, and if you want to speak with someone, you could speak with someone else who's volunteered, who's probably gone through such experiences by their own selves. But for most of the people also in our country, mental health is not something that's looked at positively, which is crazy for me to imagine now that I myself have gone through some counseling sessions, because it just looks like it is, if you're not able to deal with your problems on your own by your own self, it is the most mature and healthy way to address them. I mean, in fact, I've started to think that even if life is really smooth for me, I'll probably see a counselor once every year because it gives me great perspective on life. But I think that's a stigma that not many people are able to get over. When the Delhi riots happened earlier this year, I was doing a story where I was following the NDTV team, and we were doing a story on how the press is not so free anymore. And I was following these two reporters, and one of the reporters, while reporting on it, we went to a school, and the school was entirely destroyed. Right outside the school, there were all these copies and books of student which were just torn and strewn all over the road. And looking at that, one of these reporters was like, I've been documenting these riots ever since they started, and I've seen dead bodies and I've seen really bad things happen. But this is nothing like that. If this is what people can do to an institution of education, and if this is how they can treat, you know, these objects of children, then I don't really know what's the limit to what they cannot do. And then you know, the journalist went to a corner, and I you know, I just saw her standing by her own self, and I went there to just see if she was okay, and I realized that she was crying. And you know, I told her that these are obviously very difficult experiences to have, and you should probably consult and seek therapy for this. And I told her that I do it myself because I think it's immensely important to say it. I'm not mad to be taking counseling sessions. That's a healthy way to deal with problems, and that's how everyone should if they're struggling with things. And when I said it, you know, a couple of days later, she messaged saying, "Hey, thank you so much. I did go for therapy sessions, and you know what? I have my I have so many people in my family who are psychiatrists and psychologists, and despite that, I had the stigma of making the first move, you know." And that's how it is. Like uh, now that, and I mean, let's face it, like so many of us journalists, like everyone in my circle that I know of, 80% of them are seeking therapy, you know. So these, and that's despite the fact that a lot of them are not even going on the ground doing very intense stories. But even if you're a desk editor, यार ऐसे न्यूज़रूम में बात होती है, मतलब because it's such a normal day, मतलब you know, you're in a newsroom when there is some building collapse that has happened, or when there's some misery happened, और पीछे से कोई बोलता है कितने लोग मरे, अच्छा कोई नहीं मरा, ठीक है, वो फर्स्ट पेज पे नहीं जाएगी. And you're like, what's going on here, you know? That's not, I mean, if that's the level of desensitization that's happening, it's really sad. But having said that, I think that's one thing that I uh, and while I was making the presentation for this particular talk, and I was going through a lot of my old work, because you'll notice that a lot of work that I've shown here is from my HD days, I realized that the stories that I did, a lot of them were lighter stories. You know, the space that I've moved on to are way more intense stories. And I'm wondering if one of the baggages of experience is the fact that you know and you've seen too much, you know. And in a lot of ways, you probably do not respond the way you do when you were probably new on the field. Like I remember when, even if it was a very mundane situation, it would electrify me to be in that situation, you know. It's like when I would be out there, I would just be responding and engaging so closely with everything that is happening. Now I notice that a certain part of me at a sight of misery starts to withdraw, you know. Probably it's my fear of engaging with it, because I don't know if I want to be dealing with so much of it myself. And I mean, you know, that's something that I'm still trying to figure out, and I'm still trying to find a mechanism for. But I think those are the repercussions of this profession which need to be addressed and talked about.
I think it's very, very important. And as you rightly said, there is nothing wrong. It's rather, it's very healthy to go to seek a counselor help. And it really helps. I've spoken about it long time. I mean, so many times. After finishing my Kashmir project for 6 years, I was in a space where nobody speaks to anyone, and everybody speaks to themselves only. You know, so one has to go and seek help. I became numb, and I didn't even realize when I became numb. I used to talk to myself, only to myself. I used to play with my child. I was playing in my mind, never was playing actually with her. So, and it's very important and rather healthy for a photojournalist. In particular, I'm talking about, since this is a session on photography, but even for others also, it's very healthy to go and just speak out, because there are things which the other person knows better than us, the counselor, and he will come out. So, I have a question for you. This is regarding your last this NetGeo story, what you have done. So this is correct me if I'm wrong, but this is from the point of view of a photojournalist, huh? Yeah. How would you have treated the same story if you would have done it for yourself or for a documentary, long-term documentary project? What would be the differentiation between this or that if you would have assigned yourself a long-term project? And this is very close to what the question I have asked, when the line gets blurred between your own project and the assigned work. So what would have been the difference between this or that? And I'm
Uh,
asking for the general audience.
I think purely from a photographic purpose, it was a very different journey for me. So to say, it was my first road assignment, you know, because for once you could not travel, so I could not choose to fly or just travel into places that I wanted to go into. And so, and also for safety reasons, I just had to take the option of going by road. So while in a lot of ways it was a commission project, I was uh, exploring a different journey of engaging with photography and engaging with what I was doing. But I think if I were to do it as a personal project, so when you're working with a publication like National Geographic, one of the things that becomes paramount for them is your security. So when you're doing things, you have to get your security checks passed, and you have to follow a lot of norms. I think if I were to do it on my own, within my own space of calculated risks, I would probably go a little deeper into, like, I would have liked to spend more time in the villages where I was, because I thought that this entire problem would evolve in very different ways in villages. It might not be very visual, but the impact would be very evident in terms of loss of jobs.
So if may I interrupt you, what I'm asking is how the difference in terms of the visual context would have been.
Visual context, I think when I'm on assignment, I am always conscious, as if, I think also that's because of my training, of what is the need of the assignment. While I give myself the liberty to just engage in visuals when I want to, I'm also overly conscious that I need to be getting a certain kind of photographs. With my documentary projects, I don't really burden myself off with what should be there. What should be there is something that comes in only at a later stage, when I've done considerable body of work, and then I'm like, okay, let's look at it. What are things that we have? Okay, we have these gaps. Let's fill them up. But on my own documentary projects, it's purely a visual engagement. Purely an engagement in terms of what are the things that I I personally connect with, which touched me, or which are visually beautiful, or which are visually compelling. So I think that's one difference that becomes very evident in assignment work versus personal work.
Raj, you have a question or?
Why don't you go first?
No, because mine is not related to Soumya's work, so maybe I'll ask after you.
Okay. Soumya, to come back to the previous question, the only one of the big takeaways for me, apart from what Amit said being very valid, that it's completely okay to say that we are not okay, is the fact that institutions need to step up, because apart from the agencies, I don't think newspapers even do the required amount of safety training, physical safety training of their photojournalists when they are often in riot-like situations. I mean, they've we've had Sebastian D'Souza from Mumbai Mirror photographing a terror attack. Now, that of course was something which was a complete unknown for anyone, an attack of that nature. But then there are our cities are made into conflict zones by various governments, whether it was the UPA back in 2012 or it's been the current government last year. And it's journalists who are not physically trained who take the brunt of that. So both in terms of physical training, physical safety training and mental health training, I really hope that organizations step up. I want to come to one phrase that you said, that that photojournalism tends to be a very macho space. Uh, can you reflect, especially for younger photographers who are women, can you reflect on what have been the challenges for you? And also, one more thing, much earlier in the talk, you spoke of, meeting Amit Mehra, who became sort of a mentor for you. However, most people, most women and most men are not as lucky in finding a mentor that early. Uh, Especially because, I mean, sometimes you're just shy, sometimes in terms of approaching someone, sometimes you don't have the access, and sometimes you don't want to approach somebody because you do not know who you can trust, especially from a safety point of view, because you happen to have Amit Mehra, who happens to be a very nice person, but then a young photographer who, especially a young woman photographer, may not know who they should approach and who they shouldn't, because the industry is not a safe space for women. So, what would be your advice to young photographers, especially young women photographers?
Very valid question.
So
He
I'll
stole
take the.
my question.
Sorry.
Sorry.
He stole my question.
Okay.
Sorry.
So the
But I
first,
have a follow up to that also.
sure. Uh, so let's do the first question first. You said the need to talk about how it's such a macho space and what it is like being a woman in this space. Uh, so while I was growing up, I was a tomboy, okay, because I was growing up in a joint family
You still are.
where I had more male cousin brothers than sisters, and they were all doing the cool things. And my cousin sisters were either managing the kitchen or they would be cleaning the house or they would be doing like stitching, and all my interests were those that my brothers did. So in my mind, I thought that if I had to do those things, I needed to be a boy, which is why somewhere to the naive mind of the child, my attempt at being a tomboy was that once I came into photojournalism, and which is why all the while that I was growing up, I always had a lot of guy friends. When I was in photojournalism, I started valuing my women friends like how, because I was done with my dose of masculinity in a way that that everything that's wrong with masculinity, there are obviously the amazing men who who have continued to be my rock solid support, but then there's also this entire space and also these misplaced ideas of masculinity which tend to get heightened in a space like photojournalism. And also I think it's very interesting that for a photojournalist, आई डू थिंक दैट हमारे सोसाइटी में और हमारे देश में फोटो जर्नलिस्ट की कुछ खास वैल्यू नहीं है. The only value that we have is derived from other photojournalists, right? So because like I remember when I was leaving HT and when I was going to join Reuters, uh, I was my like executive editor of my organization who so these guys were very disappointed that I was leaving, and then they said, okay, so how much is Reuters paying you? And I told him the salary, and he walked out because he was sure that he's not going to pay me that salary, which was almost double of what I was getting at HT. Had it been a reporter, I have no doubts that they would make all their efforts to match that salary structure, So in those ways, the photojournalism thrives on one's own passion, and the community kind of uh, encouraging the other community. And
भाई
which
क्या
is
तस्वीर लिया?
किसने लिए?
नहीं वो that's the slang the photojournalists use with everyone ना. ओ भाई आज क्या तस्वीर लिया तुम?
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
So being in that space, I think I was done because, I realized that I had to be less of myself to be in that space. I had to be less of a woman to be a photojournalist.
But did you feel the discrimination being a woman? Have you been sidelined or the soft assignments or?
वो सब तो चलता ही था. मतलब I think so the thing in my organization was that while Guri sir was, the boss of the department, there were others who had to take assignments from and who were, who would give me assignments on a daily basis. So I could, like, while he was a went out, whenever I wanted to talk about these issues and he would give me these assignments, there were a lot of other people who would, just, there would be days when there would be entire weeks when I did not have one byline in the newspaper because everybody was just busy playing their politics, and they would send me on assignments that everybody knew would never get published, right? Which is very discouraging for the morale of a photographer, right? But that discrimination, like when I was starting off, I remember like one of the photographers had an assignment, and uh, they were considering who to send, and they did not even consider me because it was in a village. So they said, no, Soumya will not go there, so it obviously takes a lot of time to bridge all of those gaps. Like eventually I started to think that the reason that I wasn't getting good assignments was probably because my mobility was restricted. I didn't have my own vehicle in Delhi, and my thing was that if I did not have assignments, then I would get home at 5. But then with photographers, the thing is that they just don't go back to their families. They keep hanging out, and they keep like hanging out with each other, and रात को 8 बजे 9 बजे कोई assignment आ गया तो चले गए. So technically it's like you don't have any other life apart from being a photographer, and that was a life that I wanted. I wanted to have friends, and I wanted to have a life apart from photojournalism. So because I thought that I did not have mobility, so which is why I wasn't getting assignments, so I bought myself a two-wheeler so that I could be more active. I started staying back at the office till about 8:30, just hanging around there even when there were no assignments, just being there and showing my face to tell them that I can do assignments and I can do all of that. But it was over a period of time that I realized that eventually it's all a part of politics, and no matter what you do, they will not change what they want, like the kind of assignments that they give you. Like, and that was, despite the fact that there's a time when I was directly getting assignments from Bobby. So the editor-in-chief would write and say that I want Soumya on this assignment. So while there was this space where I was able to prove myself, there were these people who I had to deal with on a daily basis who would not, would always ensure that I did not get good assignments. And I think while you understand the politics bit of it, I think the photographer in you really seeks to get the confidence in, what are you really doing, or are you good enough? But I think not all is bad. Like I've said in the past, there are people who believe in your work and who ensure that you get the kind of opportunities, which is why, when someone like Bobby or someone like Guri sir would ensure that I was getting good assignments, and then those assignments would get noticed, it would all be worth it, right? So I think in those ways, uh, it is a difficult space to be in, but I do not want to discourage you. I would really, really like to say that, and I do think that we have like people like me, Anushri, all of us who worked in full-time jobs, we've really tried hard to be a photojournalist more than a woman. And while we've worked at organizations, we've never uttered a word about the fact that we discriminated against because we're a woman. Because in a place like India, if you have these conversations, then the natural reaction of organizations is to not hire women because they'll be like, they always keep complaining. So we've tried to hang around there, and we've tried to do all the assignments that we get and try to do a good job at it, and so that we look beyond our gender and we're seen as professionals and we're seen as photojournalists. So I think that's a struggle that is there, but the struggle is worth it. The amount of learnings you have, the way you see the world, the way you feel the world is so much more different, and it all makes that time and the space in it worth investing in. Having said that, now internationally, at least there's so much of awareness on the need to have diversity also in terms of gender, that now I get more opportunities because whenever there's stories with regards to women, people look out for women photographers, or whenever there's story, because international organizations are becoming more inclusive now, so there are way more opportunities for people with diverse backgrounds, people, there are opportunities for women, there are opportunities for transgenders, people of color. We, by the way, are people of color. I didn't realize that till the time I went to one of the countries in the West, that they're increasingly looking at getting brown people, Asians, blacks into their rosters, which is also an opportunity for us. So not everything is dark. We have opportunities, and I think we have to prove ourselves to be able to avail those opportunities. So that's the first bit of it. What is the second?
What would your advice be to young women photographers, especially because not everyone is lucky enough to meet a mentor, especially because it's not necessarily a safe space. Also, because it is not a safe space, and we are an unorganized industry with no real avenues for addressals and things like that. Are communities the way forward? I believe you've been working with a lot of women photographers your age in terms of organizing the talks that you do and stuff like that. So what is the way forward for a young woman photographer?
I think one apprehension that I really want to address is, just in case someone finds herself in a situation where they feel uncomfortable or they feel abused, they should not worry about the career repercussions of it and voice uh, their lack of consent, if not take it public. I understand it can be very difficult for women to take it public, and also in these times when there are so many defecation cases coming against people when they're raising their voices. But nothing's more important than your own mental sanity, and you'll find other ways to engage with the community. Also, there are more opportunities to engage with women photographers if you like. And also in a lot of ways we talk about abuse with just respect to women, but there are also like transgenders, and there are also like men who get abused. So I think it's important to find your own community of like-minded people where you feel safe. There is increased effort to create such communities around, and people should absolutely feel free to reach out to various photographers. For a lot of them, and me included, we're not able to respond all the times, but we do try to create communities where an open conversation can happen about it.
If may I say here, like I'm on the other side, and I can, I don't know, I can say proudly, or I'm one photographer who have got the maximum number of women students, or the girl or the female students, I would rather say. And the one thing I always make sure that they should feel safe, and that's what my journal criteria. A woman should always feel safe and respected in the presence of a man, even while a man is crossing the road, or even while a man is crossing a woman on the road. The women should feel safe and respected. Uh, these are all, I would say, like the kids. Uh, you were asking initially, how you were showing your work. You were asking Soumya, Raj, how you were showing your work and all. And one thing she said, Amit sir said, just be yourself. So that's what my idea of when I share photography. I have so many students, so there is no fixed formula for all the students. Especially I'm talking about the in context of female students. So there is no fixed formula. Uh, my only formula is, let your student fly, and let your student fly high. So everybody has his own strength. Everybody has their own apprehensions. So there cannot be one fixed formula which can apply to every student or all the photographers. There is no magic wand. They all carry their own plus points, and a best mentor or a good mentor, uh, would only capitalize or bring out their those plus points from the students. As far as the safety is concerned, it is a big issue. Why I got into this conversation now at this point of time, because it's not only about the women also. It's about me also. If I have been teaching a women photographers or female photographers, it can go other way also. So one has to be very, very careful. One has to be very transparent, and uh, I think that's the only thing I would say. One should respect, uh, whether it's a little girl or a woman you are dealing with. A woman should feel safe and respected in the presence of a man.
Yeah, also, I think something that Amit sir did to advance that was when he was visiting Lucknow, and when I was in Lucknow as well, he also made the effort to meet my parents. So I think in those ways it kind of uh, because it's not just me who's concerned, right? It's also my parents involved, and for them, the daughter's in another city, and you don't really know what's happening to her. And while they'd like to believe that she's being guided and everything's happening, but even for their own mental peace. So I think it was a really nice gesture on his part to
And
make
I
the
went
effort
there
to
only
familiarize with my
for
parents.
their mental peace. And let me make it very clear. When I teach these guys, there is no monetary transaction involved. And I don't think Soumya remembers, but all these guys, they send their work to me every day. And I don't ask for they're selected. First, they send their selected, but then I ask the whole data. And there are times when I have gone through her, Monica's, even recently Geetika's, somewhere around 2000 images, 3000 images overnight. Just want to see, have they missed something? And there are many times, and most of the time, they have missed the best of the pictures. So one has to see that, one has to go through that. So I don't know what I get out of that, but definitely I love doing that. And I want to see each and everything what they have shot. It's like my own daughter. So uh, that's it.
I think also in the initial days when you're struggling and you don't have money, so not only does he mentor you, but he also feeds you on good doses of coffees. So
That I think all these guys, be it Dinesh, be it Jesse, everybody will do that. Everybody will do, and everybody must have done that. And so that's not such a big deal. It's not
No,
such a
I
big deal.
mean, Amit, I think I've known Amit for now I think 6 years, 6 7 years, and
8 years.
I've known Soumya for around 6 years, and the first time I met Soumya was with Amit at the IIC, where I think I saw her
I
uh,
make sure that all my students meet all the photographers.
water pictures. But why I wanted Soumya to address this is because she was lucky, and this is not about the ideal situation. Life is not ideal. The community is not ideal, and forget it's not just about safety. It's not just about women photographers, but a lot of people do not even have access
Yeah.
to meet a senior photographer. They might not be living in Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore. I mean,
Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
people who are deeply interested in photography, who are in Bhilai, who are in Patna, who are in
Yeah. I just got a
Kotia.
call from Nasik,
So,
and
in
then
that sense, I think online communities are extremely important. The kind
yes.
of talks that Jassi ji you are doing are extremely important, and Soumya, you've also led the way extremely beautifully. So hopefully that's the way forward, both from a point of view of of photographers of different kinds addressing the issues that they face, whether it's women photographers, whether it's journalists, whether it's any other kinds of issues we face. I mean, you've been doing fantastic stuff, as has Deepti, as has a bunch of other people through these online spaces, online communities.
Thank you, Raj.
So
Dinesh
Raj
had a
actually
question.
asked
Yeah.
both the questions I wanted to, so I just wanted to go slightly ahead of that in terms of, for instance, I wanted to mention the fact that you did, women photographer talks also over the last few months. And I didn't want to mention them earlier because I wanted to take it up at the end. I do want you to talk about your experience of that. One, why? Two, how? Three, what thereafter? Why did you feel the need that you needed to create a separate platform altogether? Two, what was the response and from whom? Because was it only women photographers or women who were getting engaged? Or did over time the footprint become larger? And three, so where do you want to take it from here? And that to me is a very critical one, because I do believe that in India, not too many people start doing things which affect the community. And here is one time when the pandemic has one of the few collateral benefits is that there are at least some people like Jesse or Vinay, and some other people who are creating these platforms, working their asses off to create, kind of a community and sharing. And you've done that also in a very significant way with your Women Photographers platform. And I really hope, and that's what I was telling Jesse offline, and I was telling Vinay and the other people at Xtra, that obviously you people can't do this on an everyday basis. You won't have photographers to come to you to talk. You won't have audiences to attend. But there has to be something which becomes a format which people then look forward to, which people stay engaged with, because it is educational. It is also therapeutic. I do remember, the time when we were doing the Nazar Ka Adda, which fortunately were, of course, in physical
Oh,
space.
what a wonderful thing you people have
But-
done that,
But,
under the tree.
that, so therefore, and that the enriching from that, was not just for us, but for people who came, and their friendships and their bond, which have been, created for life. And what you're doing, Soumya, the point I want to make is that at a very young age, you're doing something which, like Prashant and मैं हमको लोग पूछते थे कि आप ये क्यों कर रहे हो? Daily Photo Festival क्यों कर रहे हो? So our answer used to be that, photography is given everything to us in our lives. We want to give it back. You are too young to say that, but you're still taking on that. Right? And I have the deepest respect and regard for that. So what is it that motivates you?
So there is certainly, my learning in photography has extensively come from Amit sir. But recently, in the recent couple of years, I have gotten exposed to the photography practices internationally, and I've had the chance to go to photo seminars at National Geographic and at various other platforms. And I think one thing that really interests me there, where I think it's going beyond photography, which I think in a lot of ways is where photography is right now. Photography now is not just about photography, it's about so many more things. There's so many disciplines which are coming together to make photography what it is. And one thing that probably appeals to the journalist side of me, or probably appeals to the side of me which is very intrinsically interested in the plight of humans and the plight of communities, is the fact that there is an importance to have diversity. It's not a consciousness that comes to people naturally unless people are made to see it. Like there's been a survey I think which World Press Photo did, which said that more than 90% of the history of the world has been told through the eyes of a white man, which in so many ways addresses the issues of why, let's say, third world countries are seen the way they are, or why there are not enough, why women are photographed a certain way, And I think, so when when I was doing photography and when I was working at Reuters, there was this one time when one of the photographers told me that, why don't you do some women related stories? That's why, we really want to have a woman photographer on the team. And I was like, I'm not here just to do women related stories. I want to do that, but I also want to do so many more stories because, well, I mean, I could have interest beyond my gender, right? But then there was this one time when I was browsing through my Instagram, and I realized that most of the images were of women. Even when I was doing stories which were not women related, I was kind of gravitating towards photographing women, right? And it comes from a very basic level. I as a woman relate more to women. You as a man will relate more to men, right?
Not true, but anyway.
But in the sense that,
I mean that seriously.
access,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to break your chain of
of course. Yeah. But in terms of the access, when I'm going, when I'm going somewhere, for a man, if you're going somewhere, you'll find it harder to talk to the woman first. It'll be easier for you to start having a conversation with a man with all the societal norms and everything. Likewise, for me as a woman, even maybe coming from my own point of feeling safe, I would reach out to women first and try to have a conversation with them. And probably that's where this entire narrative of having, more women in my stories came in. And I started to realize that this perspective will only enrich the photography that we do, And while in a lot of genres there are more women than there are in photojournalism, I think my experience in photojournalism made me very aware of the gender bias. Just the fact, there was this one time when Anushri and me were on a shoot and we were photographing Holi, and we wanted to put a rain cover on the camera. Okay. And for the life of us, we could not figure out how to do it. And it was okay. At that instance, I realized it was okay to not know it. There are not 5 men around me standing and judging me. Tumhe rain cover nahi lagana aata. Because I'm not saying that's how men are, but that was the kind of men that I had around me at that point of time. So, the fact that I had to just not be myself and always be the strong person, always be at the top of things, know what I'm doing, I think was very exhausting for me. And which is why this awareness was always there. Which is why when I got the chance, when the pandemic was happening and, everyone was doing talks and I wanted to do something, and I thought it was a great format and it was engaging people. It was a great way to engage me and it was a great way to engage people. I thought the thing I wanted to do was to bring in this diversity and bring in this perspective on photography. Also, for me as a woman, I need to have woman models. This is a structure that you'll see being followed at the most grassroots levels by even NGOs. Like when I'm working on a project like Child Brides, and I ask the brides what do they want to do in life, one, they do not have any aspirations of a career from their lives. Even if I force them enough, the only thing they can think of is one, a teacher, or two, an Anganwadi worker, because that is all that they've seen women do, right? So for me, who's entering the field, it is important for me to be able to see women photographers doing incredible works. Like when I'm looking at works of photographers on Magnum, most of the works that I'm seeing are by male photographers, right? I'm not actively looking at works of a lot of women. So I think that's where the consciousness was coming from, and that's why we were four of us. There's Geetika, who works as a photo researcher with DK Books. Then there's Anjali Lohia, who just passed out of SACAC. And there's Gurpreet Kaur, who is currently pursuing her degree from London, but because of the lockdown, she was stranded in Delhi. So all four of us decided to work on this together and put together these talks. So that is why. In terms of engagement and the kind of people that we're getting all sorts of people. And never did we even think that we just want to engage women, because I think at the end of the day, and coming from the space where I was coming of photojournalism, I thought it was more important for us to expose even the men to this idea, because it's just not a consciousness we have. And in a lot of ways I understand, because I'm from a small town. I've not done so many things in my life just because I am conscious of a male presence around me, just because I know that if I'm a woman in this space and I behave in a certain way, it will be considered inappropriate for a woman to be behaving like that. So I understand where that's coming from, but I also think that I can educate people and kind of make them aware of more perspectives that there are. And I think that's all we can do, right? I think we can share what we think or what we've learned, and then at the end of the day, the onus is on the other person to imbibe it or to draw whatever they want to from that.
Of course,
right?
yeah.
The way forward, you have to understand that this happened as a very impulsive thing, and we organized it in different seasons. When the first, not really seasons, you would call it phases, they were very short. We would organize about 4 days in a week, and then after organizing those 4 days, then we'd go to hibernate, and the four of us would not converse for a week. And then when all of us were kind of starting to get restless about the fact that there's nothing really happening in life, that they would be doing nothing, that it's probably a good time to do another set of talks, we'd come out with another phase. So I'll be very honest, I did not have a master plan on how I'll take this forward, but I did see a lot of response coming from the community. I have now people are reaching out to us saying that that this is what they're doing and this is what they're part of, and we want to consider having this on a platform like ours. What we're trying to figure out is, in the time of pandemic, when the lockdown has opened and the engagement at all platforms had dropped substantially, what is the best way to engage with people? So we're trying, we're considering if we still want to do it on a Zoom or if we want to choose an alternate platform. But we do imagine that we do think that it's not something that we'll probably be able to do, let's say 10 talks in a month or 4 talks in a week or something like that. But this is something that we at least want to have one session every month at least, and maybe when things are better, when people can meet in person, when people can hug and shake hands, we'll probably have physical sessions of it. We've had people invite us to do physical sessions of it in their campuses once the pandemic is over. So the fact that people see the value in it and they see that it's an important thing to have in the community is kind of encouraging us to sustain it and take it forward.
Can I make a couple of suggestions here?
Yes, please. Would love them.
Institutionalize this for yourself. And I'm saying that to you, Soumya, and I'm saying that to Jesse. I've said this to Raj many times. I have the highest regard and respect for him as a photography writer and a writer about photography, besides being a very good photographer. But I think he's too bloody lazy as a writer. And it really is, and this is a conversation he and I have had over the years, which is why I'm even saying it out publicly, because he knows where I stand on this, that not enough is written about Indian photography and Indian photographers. Just to go back to Soumya's, the beginning of your talk, when you were asked, so who are your influences? Almost towards the end of your reasonably long explanation, did you mention Raghu Rai, right? And I'm not faulting you, I'm faulting the system which does not allow a student or an Indian practitioner to be able to actually, can you hear me? As suddenly low battery thing, have enough exposure to Indian photographers and Indian photography. And really, this pandemic has brought about the framework for how this can be done. The second point you made about numbers and how the numbers are diminishing, I don't think the numbers are important. The interest will never diminish. All right.
Very well.
Number three, I'll just again hark back to the Nazar Kadda and the BPF experience. The physical involvement of people coming to a space was diminishing already. All right. And things like Zoom, things like YouTube is actually the arena, is actually the hall, is actually the place of congregation. So don't abandon that, even when it's okay for us to go and hug and meet. Let's do that over a beer and talk about photography, but let beer be the main reason there. Keep this thing going, because the point which Amit made very rightly is, what about the person from Bhilai and from Jaipur and from Auckland and from Barbados? Look what this has done. You know, I've got a daughter who is a yoga teacher who today she's got almost 45, 50 students. She's sitting in Mysore, and at least 20 of them are from all over the world. All right. So that's my third point. The fourth is just say that I am going to do this, but build a community around at least the core of it. Because on your own, I promise you, it will at some point or the other, whether it's out of fatigue, whether it's out of other interests, whether it's commercial reasons, whether you've got other things to do, it will die. All right. And that is something, again, I'm telling you out of experience, that's what happened with Prashant and me as far as Nazar and BPF is concerned. To be able to keep going, all right, it needs a community. And I'm not saying you need 50 people, you need 5, 7, 10, you know. Also, keep a revenue model in mind. It's not because you want to make money, but for people who come and attend, the transactionality of it gives it importance.
Yeah.
All right. I know that at this time, because there's such a plethora of talks and events and everything that are happening, that people are saying, "Arey yaar, ye kyun paise maang rahe?" Or "Ye aaj ke dinon mein paise maang rahe," वगैरह. But you know, people are used to valuing things according to a price.
Yes.
You know,
And
also, sorry.
So I mean, these are only suggestions. I mean, none of it. I'm in a way kind of, you know, because one thinks a lot about these things. I've experienced a lot in the last 2-3 months. And yes, again, I mean, I've had 10 years of experience in terms of the festival, and I don't want to die with that experience. I want to talk about it. All right. So
Very well said. Very well put, Feroz. Yes.
yeah. So
all valid points.
I think
what
was
happens hereafter is up to, you know, each individual or each community. But I think Indian photography and Indian photographers deserve more of this.
right.
Otherwise, we can keep whining and, you know, cringing about अरे कौन है क्या है कौन क्या काम करता है पता ही नहीं मेरे को. You know, it's actually very sad.
Yeah, you know, also another thing about our audience was, you know, we did have a mixed audience, but that was also because, you know, when we were organizing these talks, I mean, at the face of it, it was the 4 of us which were doing it, but a very important input and source of advisory was coming from Amit sir. So it wasn't like it was a team that was completely made of women. We were obviously women who were at the face of it, but there was someone like him who was, you know, there to kind of feed into the idea and advance that idea. So I think sorry.
Please carry on. Sorry.
So, which is why we are also sensitive to the fact that, you know, we will obviously have a very mixed audience, and that's what we wanted for it.
You know, Dinesh, through this women photographers, I was just dabbling with the idea, you know, why not you should get now, there's a lot of documentary or photojournalist photographers, women photographers have come on your platform. What about getting some commercial photographers? So and in fact, you know, I'm so grateful to their platform that because of that I came to know, and I just Google the best architectural women photographer, which I never thought of, honestly speaking, because again it's a man's world. In India I don't see there are 1 or 2 from Ahmedabad, I think, but also not a mainstream photographer. But then I Google, and you won't believe the kind of work I have seen by those women photographers. Boss, literally, I was taken aback. I said, shit, man, these are the work and women photographers have been doing worldwide. Oh my God. So my suggestion to them was, get these photographers, get some photographers who are doing aerial photography, women photographers. Why not commercial photographers or portrait photographers? So I think they have been working on those lines on now also.
Also, Dinesh, so I really suck with figuring out the finances end of it. So I will reach out to you for all advice on
Yeah,
how
that's part of
things
it.
like these can be
Make
monetized or
sure it's not just you. Make sure it's a team of 4 or 5 people,
right.
because each person then comes with their own expertise or their own experience.
You should get one marketing or MBA guy, on your platform who can just guide you. And why not? Why not?
It's like, I'll be the first person to admit that, one of the failings of the Daily Photo Festival is the fact that we did not look at it as a business also. And we didn't have a separate, marketing manager and a separate person to go to possible sponsors, etc.
Yeah.
Any such thing at the end of the day, if you wanted to live and thrive, and you would want to, you should, anything you're passionate about, has to have an ability to be able to stand on its own feet. And in today's world, in things like this, a thing has to, besides passion, besides involvement, besides engagement, besides love, one of the things that needs to stand on its feet is money. Why are we shy of that? I'm not saying become greedy and you're going to make empires and become wealthy, but enough to be able to feed and perpetuate the good work you're doing. You need money. There's no two ways about it. Yeah.
There has to be a model for sustainability now. So there has to be. Otherwise, it will fizzle out in few months. Period.
Yeah, I think I would.
And what's better, a good idea, dying because we were so moralistic right about not making money, or
there is nothing wrong in making money.
There's nothing wrong because no, I think I would totally agree with what Dinesh sir has said, and I think we've had this talk quite a number of times, and every time whenever we used to pick up the phone, and he would say that that we'll have to work on something and to monetize it as well. So there are two things that I would really like to add to what Dinesh sir has also said and what Soumya was also saying earlier was that I think what this pandemic has done to us is that to realize that we can really transcend through the boundaries and I was looking at my own YouTube channel's analytics. Before the pandemic, we had 0% of viewership coming from English-speaking countries. Zero, virtually zero, maybe 0.1 coming from US, and that too only because of our own Indians who were there residing there, not because of anything else. So 0.001%. And today, yesterday only I was looking at it, and we had 9% viewership coming from US and Europe. We had viewership from Sri Lanka, we had viewership from Nepal, we had viewership from Pakistan. And that is amazing, and that is what this has done. And I think we don't have to look at कि दिल्ली में मैं वर्कशॉप करूंगा तो मेरे को कितने बंदे मिलेंगे and people used to tell me that point of time that we had people traveling from Allahabad. That Vivek Singh is a mutual friend and he has traveled several times to attend our physical workshops here, and he's been saying that how can we really go global in a way that he can be sitting there and attending the workshop. I think this is what we have realized, and we have to continue doing this even when the pandemic is over, and we wish and hope that it gets over, but we wish and hope that we continue doing things on this platform so that we have a wider reach, wider audience, and probably so there are two things now. So I think the monetization in a way has to happen. So in what way we're still trying to figure out. I've been working at my own end, and I've been seeking inputs as well, and probably I'll be some of you will be receiving calls from me that how do we really taking inputs on the thoughts that I'm already trying to generate and work on them. But what is most important is that speaking to the talent, and I was listening to, I was reading one comment here, and I think that sums it up what this has done on YouTube. Is that outside of the online photography community, the importance of such sessions cannot be emphasized enough, where ideas and stories are discussed as opposed to gear and technical terms. And what Dinesh was talking about, Raj not being able to really
Raj alone nahi, Raj ko ek community banani hai like this.
So not alone, so not in pointing to him, but I think but we have done enough, starting with F-stop and starting with coming to my own Exploring Light, and then Srishti and many others. What they've done is a phenomenal job of bringing people, such wonderful photographers, face to face with people whom they did not even know. So I think even for Soumya and even for Raj Lalwani and even for Amit sir and Dinesh Khanna, you as well, you are now addressing more and more people whom you could not have addressed and spoken to. And same is true on the other side as well, that starting with me, and I had to admit that, and I am candid enough to admit that the kind of photographers that I came across, starting with F-stop as well, and that is where I saw Soumya for the first time. It is amazing. We live in our, over a period of time, we get into our own boxes, small boxes, where we don't see beyond what we do. So if my genre was landscape, so I could not see beyond what landscape photographers were. And I might have known Dinesh Khanna sir and Amit Mehra sir only because that they belong to Delhi, and nothing, and probably not because they were street and documentary photographers, because that was not my genre. I think this is phenomenal. And I think we have to somewhere down the line carry this forward and create a larger community where we continue to be the torch bearers of wonderful talent.
Okay, I just want, look, my iPad keeps, flicking out because it's down to some 5% battery charge. But I do want to just slightly elaborate on my point about monetizing, because I do find that, all of us, largely because of our education system and our political environment and the fact that, pure photography, etc., are squeamish about money and photography. As far as I'm concerned, any photographer who's ever worked with a grant, who's ever sold a print, who's ever worked for a newspaper, who's ever gone and shot a product, has monetized photography, right? So let's be squeamish about it. And the reason I'm saying this again and again is because in the last 20 years, I've had too many photographers. I've heard from too many people, no, but this is my art, etc., etc. So I want people to be able to move beyond that. And using Jesse's platform, I'm not just addressing the 3 other people on this panel, but I'm hopefully talking to a lot of other people. That this is what you need to do. And the only people who do pure photography and don't monetize it are the ones who work as doctors and do photography on the weekends, or who fly planes and then do photography through the windscreen of their cockpit. So let's not be squeamish about this. And just to wind up, really you people are onto such brilliant things. Soumya, Jesse, and Raj, please make sure you institutionalize it. Find ways to, I'm happy to discuss this with you, though I'm a failure, but I have a lot of failings to share. No, and I'm serious about that. I have a lot of failings to share. I'm very aware of what failed in whatever we tried.
That's a great learning.
There. Yeah. All right. But just make sure that these things are in some form the other they kept going.
But Dinesh, you were right.
Blink out is not because I got disgusted or something. It's just that my iPad died.
Dinesh, you were right. 3 घंटे हो गए.
See how much I watch everyone.
Dinesh, when you say that you're a failure, I'm reminded of Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing.
failures are always such
Yeah,
learnings that let's call failures as some other word. Let's call it ping pong. So that because the word failure is a
Failure is
negative,
not a bad thing.
is
It's the
negative on
most
our
interesting.
psyche at the way
Yeah.
we've been conditioned to see it.
But for me, in my
But
head,
let's call it
failure
something
का
else.
दूसरा word होता है lesson.
Yeah, we have to fail forward.
Fair enough.
It's
Even
the
backwards, sir, is a
the
lesson.
only thing is that 63, I do not want to learn from my failures to do another festival or to do or set up another virtual platform. But I'm extremely heartened to see that there are people who are doing it with so much vigor.
Lovely. To that note, thank you so much, Soumya, for a wonderful talk.
I have one.
I think Raj has
I have
something
one
to
question.
say.
Raj is one thing.
Sorry.
Moving away from institutions and education of photography, but something that Jussi said has been weighing on my mind, that we are all in boxes. We have our own bubbles, our bubbles of comfort, and we remain within them. The fashion photography community is often forget interacting, but often is not aware of the wedding photography community, is often not aware of the photojournalist community, is often not aware of the for lack of better terms, the festival circuit photographers, because I mean, I really don't know how to classify certain photographers. But what have you learned from non-photojournalists and non-documentary photographers from a pure learning perspective when it comes to your photography and your journey? What are the greatest learnings that you have received from looking at non-photojournalistic, non-documentary work? Now, whatever genre it may be, it might be landscapes, it might be nudes, it might be, anything. It could be fashion or weddings or whatever.
I think that's a very, very interesting question. Also intense, I think. But
Short answer.
इसका short answer हो नहीं सकता है.
Actually, listen, boss.
हाँ.
Soumya, you have to do what you said before we went on air.
Which was?
Getty. जो है वो बकचोदी में होगा.
But I think this is important because a lot of young photographers, especially when they are starting out,
One has to go to the washroom also, boss. Please have some mercy. Have some mercy.
No, jokes apart, young photographers do not decide to become photographers. They say कि मुझे wedding photographer बनना है या मुझे fashion photographer बनना है. In one particular box. Now that might be good from a point of view of, say, making money and specialization and things like that. But within the larger game of photography, within the larger world of photography, what have you learned from work that is different from yours?
I'm taking my time to answer this question because because I think that whenever I get tired of looking at photojournalism or doing photojournalism myself, I look at other genres of photography and it revives me. It makes me see the scope of photography and it gives me hope that there's so much more to do in photography. Honestly, I don't know if I'll be a photographer 10 years from, a photojournalist 10 years from now. I would want to dabble in the various spaces of photography, and it also teaches me kahin na kahin as documentary photographers or as photojournalists, hum make sense of we come from a high from a point of what's the phrase, I don't know, basically हमें लगता है कि हम बहुत ही socially relevant काम कर रहे हैं, and also in the other genres of photography, दूसरे genres के photographers भी they look up to us कि हम बहुत important काम कर रहे हैं. लेकिन मुझे लगता है कि कभी-कभी मुझे अगर सिर्फ photography में indulge करना हो, when if there are times when I don't want to wrench out my heart, when I don't want to just bother myself with the plight of the world. आजकल मैं ये सोचने लगी हूँ, like we read in schools about Gautam Buddha's experience of how he went on this journey, and it came from a point of him looking at a lot of mystery, and then how he decided that it was all a point of there's so much of mystery in human, and he needed to find what's the truth and stuff like that. And I was like, this is the exhaustion where it comes from. Yeah, Matlab, I mean, as important as all of this is, I don't know how much of it can I really take, and I don't know for how long can I really take it. And if I don't want to shut myself to photography, if I don't want to shut myself to the experiences of photography, for how long can I be honest to myself? So I think in those ways, I always see hope in the fact that there are other people who engage so deeply and so closely with their medium, where it's so much more about the medium alone, and it gives me a lot of it gives me hope and breathing.
I was pretty sure that she was gone. So how Soumya starts, her day, I'll tell you. ये सुबह कभी भी मेरे को फोन करती है, सर मैं सोच रही थी, and then there will be a pause of 30 seconds. So I know that she will be on. अभी ये चल सकती है और 1-1.5 घंटा और. She comes from Lucknow. Give her that credit, Anyway, wonderful session, Soumya. It was very good. Life-changing.
Thank you, Soumya. Wonderful.
Thank you, Soumya. It was...
As always. And I'm so glad you showed different work altogether. Just show that even at your young and tender age, what a journey it's been. And what a journey it will be. Fabulous.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for being my student.
Okay, now
I learned a lot.
I know you're moving to the edge of pulling my leg, so I'm going to
No, I meant it. I learned a lot. Half of the time she's my lifeline. यार मेरे को मेरे बहुत सारे काम करवाती है. I'm technically zero. तो ये काफी काम handle करती है. Fabulous. And Raj, what light you are using?
I know.
iPad.
I wanted to ask.
iPad.
Yes. अरे यार क्या मतलब मस्त लाइट है बिल्कुल.
That just keeps going in deep mode.
Yeah, it's just such a लग रहा है बिल्कुल strip light.
नहीं तो ऐसा होगा, but ये this is iPad ऐसा रखा है and iPad पे white background लगा के.
No, that I got, but I was just wanted to know source of light because you're absolutely sharp, not pixelated. You're not pixelated. Lovely.
I for all my talks I sit in the veranda. It's like a balcony, and the lighting over here is terrible. Like it's right above my head, so it'll be ugly top light. And
anyway, guys, Raj has changed his name. His name is Gujarat, and he will tell you personally.
Jesse, I really want to thank you for organizing these talks, for having me here. It's so much less intimidating having just 5 people on the screen and not knowing if anyone is watching it. The conversations are so much more free flowing. So thank you. And वैसे भी I think I remember you from F-Stop, and I remembered
he asked the maximum questions from you.
Yeah, and I also remember the question he asked, which was coming from a high point of sensitivity, and they were very interesting questions that he'd asked. So thank you for all this you're doing, and thank you for informing us about the works of so many photographers.
But मेरे को बहुत मेहनत करनी पड़ी है आपको बुलाने में. So I had to really chase her like crazy. नहीं आ जाओ किसी तरह.
I'm really sorry about that.
Sir, back end अब मैं आपको बता दूं, सारा thanks बोल देना मेरे को, बाकी बात
ठीक है.
चलो.
And thank you, Raj and Dinesh sir and Amit sir also. Amit sir for moderating it, which was a last moment surprise, and Dinesh sir and Raj sir, you guys have been so intricate and supportive of everything I've done. So thank you.
Anytime. Always happy to see your work. Always happy.
No, we should have Raj now as a speaker here. Yeah, we should have Raj here as a speaker.
Absolutely.
It will be fantastic.
अभी तो 3 घंटे हो गए हैं, फिर कभी.
हाँ, कोई बात नहीं. टाइम है आजकल. Assignment तो कोई दे नहीं.
I'll chase him. No, seriously, he has to.
Whenever you want, sure.
Yeah, lovely. That would be a lovely experience.
Yeah, certainly.
Absolutely.
One of my favorite photographers.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite people to speak on photography also.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to say that.
Too
Soumya
much pressure,
can
yeah.
talk about his experiences from the magazine side as a writer, as a photographer, as a viewer of photography, as a producer of photography. Sab kuch.
Yep.
Thank
So,
you, guys.
Jesse,
Too much
6
pressure,
घंटे
but
का
thank you.
होगा. You can do it over 2 weekends, or we can do it in one marathon. You can
Whenever.
decide.
नहीं कर लेंगे I'll be अभी I think हमारा ये coming week is really tight busy बहुत ज़्यादा है because capturing wow के sessions भी हैं, दिनेश सर के भी हैं, मेरे भी हैं, and plus
No,
other
the
also.
second half of mid July.
Yeah, so mid July we'll do, certainly do.
Whenever.
Definitely a weekend.
Always happy to help.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Hopefully, if you have the time, do come on tomorrow. I hope Jesse will send you a.
No, we'll come out.
Absolutely.
7 p.m.
Welcome.
tomorrow, but I'll tag you on that post.
Welcome.
Sure thing.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank God I took a break in at last.
And thank you.
You left. तेरा कैमरा ऑन था उस टाइम हमें.
नहीं मैं ऑफ करके गया था.
नहीं तूने सोचा तो नहीं किया ऑफ.
The camera always sees.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
All right.
Take
bye.
care. Thank you, Soumya. Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Jesse ji. Bye bye.
Thank
so
you,
much,
Ahmed.
everyone.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Dinesh.
चल
Bye-bye.
सौम्या अभी थोड़ी देर बाद फोन करना. Bye.
Bye.
करता हूँ अभी.